Chapter 1008. Tao being Dapamkara. Chapter 1008. Tao being Dapamkara. Right then, an unusual commotion broke out in the crowd. Die, Fiend! Suddenly, a cultivator stood out and charged towards Tao being Malevolent Earth. Kill! Kill the Fiend! Figures appeared one after another, all void reversions. As though they had lost their minds, they charged towards Tao being Malevolent Earth like madmen. Su Zimo was momentarily stunned. Were these cultivators merely upset over the injustice, or did they have some personal feud with Tao being Malevolent Earth? A void reversion charged forward and his blood chi burst forth. With a flick of his wrist, his sword drew dozens of sword flowers in midair that floated towards Tao being Malevolent Earth. Poof! Tao being Malevolent Earth raised his bone spear and stabbed with it in reverse, tearing through the layers of sword flowers as though they were dried weeds, creating a huge bloody hole in the man's body. A malevolent aura surged from the bone spear and surged into the spirit platform of the man. His essence spirit was destroyed right away. Two more void reversions charged forward. Tao being Malevolent Earth waved his bone spear and stabbed the two of them through the heart with just 2 moves. A bunch of ants. He sneered. Poof, poof, poof. In high spirits, Tao being Malevolent Earth charged into the crowd and killed more than 10 cultivators. More than 10 corpses hung on the bone spear, dripping with blood in a frightening manner. The battle between Su Zimo and the 5 titular disciples seemed like it was back and forth. However, in reality, most void reversions would not last more than 3 moves against the titular disciples. If those cultivators charged forward, they would be courting death. Many more cultivators charged forward as though they had lost their minds. Tao being Malevolent Earth was not the only one targeted. Tao being Heavenly Dipper, Tao being Zephyr Thunder and Monk Formless were attacked as well. The status of a titular disciple was not something that anyone with a forgiving nature could attain. The 3 of them attacked decisively and corpses filled the ground beneath their feet in no time. The crowd was in chaos and countless cultivators retreated as though they were hiding from something. Su Zimo focused his gaze and finally noticed something. A pink figure walked through the crowd and was releasing the bewitchment technique of pure maiden sect to the void reversions present. Cultivators with weak minds and unstable Tao hearts would be bewitched very quickly and charge towards Tao being Malevolent Earth and the others like madmen. Demoness G. She did not leave at all. Kill. Demoness G murmured repeatedly in a soft voice. Go forth and kill those titular disciples. Your names will spread throughout the world and you'll obtain countless treasures. You'll replace them and become new titular disciples. Demoness G's eyes, appearance, voice and physique were filled with all sorts of temptations, causing one to fall head over heels for her and be driven by her instinctively. However, it did not take long for the remaining cultivators to react. When they saw Demoness G walking over, they retreated hurriedly, avoiding her like the plague. In the end, Demoness G was the only one left standing on the spot with no one else around. Forget it. Su Zimo smiled. Don't involve anyone else. They will just be sending themselves to die if they come over. Demoness G looked at Su Zimo and shook her head. I don't care. Their lives have nothing to do with me. I only want you to live. Upon hearing that, countless cultivators hid far away and cursed. As expected of a demoness of the Fiend sections. How inhumane. If there's a chance, I'll definitely capture her alive and toy with her properly so that she can witness my prowess. The cultivators only dared to curse from afar, and did not dare to advance. Even though Demoness G was only at the early stage void reversion realm, she was a titular disciple as well and had even entered the human emperor's palace before, receiving guidance from Fairy Ling Long. Ordinary void reversions could not defend against her charms. Zimo, even if nobody will help you, I'll stay with you. Demoness G walked towards Su Zimo step by step firmly with conviction. There was no hesitation or fear in her eyes. Looking at Demoness G who was walking over, Su Zimo's mind flashed with the image of the figure that shielded him beneath the human emperor's palace. The 2 figures gradually fused into one. Su Zimo sighed. Why are you doing this? That's because you're my tripod. Demoness G came to Su Zimo's side and smiled, as though she had reverted to her usual cheeky self of a quirky young maiden. Su Zimo had heard Demoness G mention the tripod multiple times. However, even now, He did not know what it meant to be a tripod of the Pure Maiden sect. He only knew that 100 years ago, this young lady was the one who shielded him without reservations beneath the human emperor's palace and did not retreat at all. 100 years later, this was still the same young lady that was standing shoulder to shoulder with him in the Dao inheritance ground and never left. Demoness G, we want that person dead for sure. Dao being Malevolent Earth said coldly, I've been persuading you repeatedly because you're someone of the Fiend's sections. Don't be ungrateful. None of your business. Rolling her eyes, Demoness G hugged Su Zimo's arm with one hand and whispered, Zimo, don't let me down. You have to escape alive. Su Zimo was confused by her statement that made no sense, but Demoness G did not continue. Not far away, a monk strode through the crowd. At that moment, the surrounding cultivators had already retreated far away, afraid that they would be bewitched by Demoness G. However, the monk walked towards the battlefield on his own accord, thus looking extremely striking. Demoness G did not think too much about it. When she caught sight of someone walking over from the corner of her eye, she used her bewitching voice once more. Monk, there are fiends over there that kill without batting an eyelid. Monk, please take action and suppress them. That's why I'm here. The monk pressed his palms together and replied. Eh. The monk's voice was clear and calm. It was clear that he was not bewitched by her. When Demoness G heard that, she could not help but turn over. When Su Zimo heard that voice, his heart skipped a beat and he turned around as well. The monk was none other than Ming Zhan, who had once lived with Su Zimo for 20 years at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Ever since Ming Zhan joined Dapamkara Monastery in Myriad Phenomenon City, it had been more than 100 years since they parted ways. Ming Zhan was already at early-stage Void Reversion realm. His comprehension of Buddhism was extremely high. Coupled with his pure heart and the backing of a super sect like Dapamkara Monastery that possessed endless resources, it was not surprising that he could reach the Void Reversion realm in 100 years. To think that apart from Demoness G, Ming Zhan had also entered the Dao inheritance ground. A warm feeling flowed through Su Zimo's heart. He was not alone. You're the little monk who joined Dapamkara Monastery 100 years ago. Monk Formless frowned slightly and asked. My Dao title right now is Dapamkara. Ming Zhan replied calmly. The Dao title, Dapamkara, meant that Ming Zhan had already become a titular disciple of Dapamkara Monastery. Dao being Malevolent Earth frowned. Including Demoness G and Ming Zhan, it meant that 2 titular disciples were on Su Zimo's side. The situation that could have been easily resolved was now slightly troublesome. This Su Zimo is truly not fated to die. To think that he would have 2 titular disciples helping him. It's useless. The 2 of them have just entered the Void Reversion realm. Although they are also titular disciples, they have yet to form their Dao hearts and are no match for Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others in terms of combat strength. The most they can do is to delay the inevitable outcome. Some cultivators were sharp and analyzed the situation clearly and logically. Chapter 1009, Damaged Essence Spirit. Chapter 1009, Damaged Essence Spirit. Su Zimo straightened his body slowly as the flames of war reignited in his eyes. At that moment, he would not leave even if Demoness G and Ming Zhan were to leave. Right now, there was only a single way to resolve the situation. He had to kill his way out. Sensing Su Zimo's fighting spirit, Dao being Heavenly Dipper smiled gently and remarked leisurely, Interesting. To think that you haven't given up. Leave this little monk to me. Monk Formless said indifferently, I can conveniently discuss Buddhism with him as well. Dao being Malevolent Earth said coldly, I'll take care of Demoness G. The 3 of you kill Su Zimo as soon as possible. Don't forget to share the treasures with me. A sword appeared in Demoness G's hands. A green lantern suddenly flew out from Ming Zhan's glabella. A tiny flame burned on the green lantern. It was the size of a pinky and flickered, as though it could extinguish at any moment. When he saw the green lantern, there was a clear hint of fear in the depths of Monk Formless' eyes. Dong! Monk Formless struck his wooden fish first. Ming Zhan's expression was unchanged as he spoke in Sanskrit. He had once cultivated the Daming True Sutra at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, and the sound of the wooden fish did not affect him much. Formless Dermic Seal. Monk Formless conjured hand seals and released a gigantic dermic seal that smashed towards Ming Zhen. Su Zimo had seen Void Reversion monks of Formless Monastery release this dermic seal before. However, its power was worlds apart from what Monk Formless could release. Ming Zhen was fearless as he gripped the green lantern and conjured hand seals, exhaling gently at the flames on the lantern. Swoosh! The flames on the green lantern intensified and burned towards the formless dermic seal, turning it into nothingness in no time. Although Ming Zhen was only at the early stage Void Reversion realm, he was not disadvantaged against Monk Formless at all. On the other side, Demoness Ji and Dao being Malevolent Earth were already exchanging blows. Dao being Malevolent Earth's power was even stronger. However, Demoness Ji relied on the Heaven Fiend dance that she learned from Fairy Ling Long in the Human Emperor's Palace and her nimble movement technique so that Dao being Malevolent Earth could not injure her at all. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, even the Rakshasa race was troubled by this Heaven Fiend dance. It would be difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time in a fight between two titular disciples of the Fiend sections. Su Zimo was going to face Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Dao being Heavenly Dipper alone along with Dao being Hidden Death who was hiding in the dark. Let's fight! His eyes shone brightly as he strode forward. Bang! 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 Su Zimo held the Creation Green Lotus in his left hand and clashed against Dao being Heavenly Dipper's saber and Dao being Zephyr Thunder's Hammer without being disadvantaged. His right hand gripped the long sword that he snatched from Dao being Hidden Death. Using the sword like a saber, he condensed multiple saber intents. Countercurrent, vortex, raging tides and ripple. Ghost howl, blood flow, hell, white bones, phantom and corpse. The two saber intents, Sea Calming Saber and Azura Saber, burst forth and collided continuously. In the end, they seemed like they were about to fuse. The saber intent became thicker, more condensed and ferocious. Against the two great titular disciples, Su Zimo released all his potential and channeled the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern to protect his body. He was like an immortal king descending upon the world and fought with increasing ferocity. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Zephyr Thunder were secretly alarmed. Their combined strength was definitely superior to Su Zimo's. Furthermore, Su Zimo was already injured. However, Su Zimo's saber intent was getting stronger and his will was getting more condensed. There was a high chance that he would break through during the battle. As for their attacks, even if they managed to pass through Su Zimo's saber intent, they would be negated by the Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern around him. Dao being Hidden Death did not appear the entire time. There were two possibilities. First, he had already left. That would be extremely unlikely because he was injured by Su Zimo. Given the vengeful nature of the Hidden Death sect assassin, there was no way he would leave. Second, Dao being Hidden Death had no chance to attack. The current situation gave the surrounding cultivators the illusion that Su Zimo was suppressing the two titular disciples. A look of impatience finally appeared in Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Zephyr Thunder's eyes. They did not want to continue dragging things. Su Zimo, let me tell you the biggest difference between the nascent soul and void reversion realm. Dao being Heavenly Dipper spoke slowly and his glabella flickered. A terrifying spirit consciousness burst forth, condensing into a star in midair that charged towards Su Zimo. It was an essence spirit secret skill. Up till this point of the battle, Dao being Heavenly Dipper had finally summoned his essence spirit secret skill. Dao being Zephyr Thunder followed without hesitation as well. Soul Shaker Art. A thick spirit consciousness condensed into a spirit consciousness hammer in midair and smashed towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Essence spirit secret skills were unlike clashes between dermic arts or saber intents. Be it a clash of dermic arts or a battle of saber intents, even if power surged into his body, he could rely on his strong physique and terrifying regeneration capabilities to continue. However, it was different for essence spirit fights. If he was careless, his physical body and essence spirit would both be destroyed. Su Zimo activated the Mingwang prayer beads immediately. Buzz! The Mingwang prayer beads shone brightly and emanated an invisible barrier of light. It shone with golden runes and was filled with a Buddhist light that was sacred and flawless. The star crashed into the barrier. There was a slight pause. The barrier shattered. The star vanished as well. Swoosh! The spirit consciousness hammer rushed into Su Zimo's consciousness and pummeled down violently on his essence spirit. 45 creation green lotus seeds transformed into rays of green light that struck the spirit consciousness hammer continuously. Cling! Clang! There was a deafening and crisp sound. The glow on the 45 creation green lotus seeds had already dissipated before the spirit consciousness hammer gradually dispersed. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. Although the entire process seemed short, it was extremely dangerous. If he could not defend against the two essence spirit secret skills, he would be killed instantly. No matter how strong his physical body was, it was useless. Right then, a warning flashed in Su Zimo's mind. Not good. His expression changed starkly. At the final moment, he had forgotten about someone. Dao being hidden death. A spirit consciousness dagger entered Su Zimo's consciousness and stabbed towards his essence spirit. At that moment, the 45 creation green lotus seeds had just collided with the spirit consciousness hammer and were no longer glowing. There was no way they could defend against that spirit consciousness dagger. It was a fatal killing move. Against the spirit consciousness dagger, Su Zimo's black-haired essence spirit was like a 3-year-old child who could not resist at all. In a flash, the scarlet-haired spirit rushed out from a corner of his consciousness. The Dao inheritance ground restricted his bloodline and demon spirit consciousness. However, the actions of his scarlet-haired spirit within his consciousness could not be sensed. The scarlet-haired spirit collided with the black-haired essence spirit and the two essence spirits fused completely, transforming into an existence that was half human and half dragon and covered in scales. The spirit consciousness dagger struck the new essence spirit. Bang! It dissipated and a large portion of the dragon scales on the new essence spirit's body were sliced off by the dagger. The tremendous force separated the two essence spirits. Even though the two essence spirits were fused, no matter how strong they were, they only had a layer of dragon scales for protection. There was no way they could defend against the essence spirit's secret skill of a titular disciple. Su Zimo spat out a mouthful of blood. Although his two essence spirits did not die, they were still severely injured and his entire body withered rapidly. Chapter 1010, Stone Statue. Chapter 1010, Stone Statue. In the end, he was defeated. An indignant feeling surged into Su Zimo's heart. In reality, he did not know that Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Zephyr Thunder were even more shocked. Even though the three of them titular disciples joined forces and released their essence spirit secret skills, they could not kill a nascent soul directly. They truly could not imagine how far this person would grow if they allowed him to continue with his cultivation. The battles on the other two sides were gradually becoming clearer. Neither Dao being Malevolent Earth nor Demoness G could do anything to one another. Demoness G's methods could not pose a threat to Dao being Malevolent Earth. On the other hand, Dao being Malevolent Earth could not hurt her thanks to her Heaven Fiend dance. Even if both parties fought for a day and night, they would probably be in a stalemate. The fight between Ming Zhan and Monk Formless was nearing its end. Ming Zhan's Buddhist dermic arts were profound and he had read countless secret Buddhist texts at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Coupled with his pure and innocent heart, he had a solid foundation. However, he was still too young. Void Reversion had a lifespan of 5,000 years and he was only 100 years old. In terms of experience, knowledge and comprehension of life, he was far inferior compared to the monk Formless who was already 3,000 years old. Most importantly, his Dao heart had yet to be established and he was forced to retreat in defeat against monk Formless who possessed a Dao heart. Su Zimo struggled to stand up. His essence spirit felt a tearing pain and his body swayed uncontrollably. It was extremely difficult to fully recover from such wounds on the essence spirit. If he could not recover completely, even if he managed to escape, his future cultivation would most likely stop at the nascent soul realm. A resolute look flashed through Demoness G's eyes as she looked at Su Zimo who was not far away. She had long made up her mind on this matter. Dodging Dao being Malevolent Earth's bone spear, she withdrew and retreated from the battlefield. Dao being Malevolent Earth was also frustrated by Demoness G's actions and did not give chase when he saw her retreat from the battlefield. Demoness G extended her arms and raised her head slightly. Closing her legs, her entire body floated up slowly. She had a pious expression as she chanted obscure words, looking at Su Zimo with deep emotions without blinking. A mysterious power appeared beside her. Immediately after, something seemed to be spilling out of Demoness G's body endlessly, converging into a milky white light that surged into Su Zimo's body through the top of his head. Apart from the injuries to his essence spirit, Su Zimo's internal and external injuries seemed to be healing gradually. Furthermore, the most frightening thing was that Su Zimo's aura was rising continuously, turning increasingly terrifying as he charged towards the void reversion realm. On the contrary, as Su Zimo's aura rose, Demoness G's aura weakened continuously. The light in her eyes dimmed gradually as well. This is... Dao being Malevolent Earth frowned and murmured softly, as though he recalled something. Sacrifice. Right then, Dao being Hidden Death's figure appeared. Gritting his teeth he said, "It's a secret sacrifice technique of Pure Maiden's sect. Hurry and stop her." Dao being Hidden Death and Dao being Malevolent Earth attacked at the same time, charging towards Demoness G who was in midair. Right then something weird happened. The fairy stone statue that was erected on the empty space on the ground suddenly burst forth with a brilliant light that shot into the skies. A legacy phenomenon had appeared. Nobody expected that someone would trigger a legacy phenomenon at this juncture. But who was it? Right now, the only two women in the battlefield were female cultivators of the Fiend sex. How could they get involved with this stone statue of a fairy? The eyes of the fairy stone statue shone with two mysterious glows that shrouded Demoness G. Demoness G. The pure maiden of the Fiend sex had obtained the inheritance recognition of the fairy stone statue. When they saw that, all the cultivators widened their eyes in confusion. This fairy stone statue was extremely famous. She had stood in the Dao inheritance ground for countless years and no one knew her background. She did not leave any words or information about her inheritance either. Over the years, countless female cultivators from the immortal sex had tried to obtain the recognition of the stone statue but to no avail. To think that the successor of the fairy stone statue would be chosen today. We were all wrong. Dao being Heavenly Dipper suddenly said. Since time immemorial, every cultivator who saw this stone statue would think that it was someone from an immortal sect when they saw its ethereal appearance. However, in reality, she was not a fairy but a demoness. Unknowingly, the demoness stone statue had bewitched the eyes and minds of countless cultivators as it stood there for so many years and nobody had realized it. This was the true brilliance of pure maiden sex charm. The attacks of Dao being Hidden Death and Dao being Malevolent Earth collided against the light emitted by the demoness stone statue and were repelled. With the legacy activated, no one could hurt Demoness G anymore. However, at that moment, Demoness G's aura was extremely weak. There was a connection between her and Su Zimo. While Su Zimo was getting stronger, he seemed to have absorbed all of Demoness G's essence, dermic powers and essence spirit. Su Zimo wanted to cut it off but there was no reaction. Once that connection was established, only Demoness G could sever it herself. Before long, Demoness G's aura was so weak that she seemed like a mortal. As for Su Zimo's aura, it was extremely berserk and had already broken through the boundaries of the nascent soul realm. Of course, this was not a true breakthrough. He had only obtained the power of another cultivator for a short period of time. The only way he could possibly break through to the void reversion realm would be if he could cultivate immediately and absorb all the power in his body. Demoness G looked at Su Zimo and felt her eyelids turning heavy as well as deep exhaustion. She was still trying her best to smile as she whispered to him, "Remember my words. You must escape alive." It was only now that Su Zimo understood the meaning behind Demoness G's words before the battle. So, she had already made the decision to sacrifice herself at that time. What exactly was a sacrifice? What did it have to do with a tripod? Up till now, Su Zimo still did not understand and had countless doubts. However, he knew that this was not the time to consider such things. He had to escape with Ming Zhan with the help of the sudden increase in strength. Demoness G's figure had already vanished. If she could obtain the recognition of the Demoness stone statue, Demoness G would not be in danger for the time being, and no one would be able to hurt her. While everyone was stunned, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he charged towards Ming Zhan. Swash! With a gentle breeze, he arrived before Ming Zhan. It was too fast. Although it was not the true power of a void reversion, it was enough to change the entire situation. Audacious! Monk Formless hollered and strode forward, wanting to stop Su Zimo. Scram! Su Zimo gripped the creation green lotus in reverse and smashed it towards Monk Formless. Monk Formless held the wooden fish and blocked upwards. Bang! If it was before, even if Su Zimo was at his peak condition, this single exchange would at most force Monk Formless a half-step back and numb the latter's arms. But now, Monk Formless was sent flying by Su Zimo's creation green lotus and fell to the ground. By the time he got up, his face was already pale. Chapter 10-11, Dao being poisoned. Chapter 10-11, Dao being poison. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Zephyr Thunder charged over from both sides. Kill! Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his mouth and released Thunderclap Kill once more. Thunder rumbled and shocked everyone. Gripping the creation green lotus in his hands, Su Zimo charged towards the incoming saber. He clenched his right hand into a fist and met the incoming Zephyr Thunder hammer head-on. Boom! With a loud bang, Dao being Heavenly Dipper was sent flying. Bang! There was a flash of blood and Su Zimo's right hand was smashed into a blur, revealing the Scarlet Divine Phoenix Bone. However, he managed to repel the hammer. Right now, Su Zimo did not know what the so-called sacrifice was or what Demonis G had given up for him. However, at that moment, boundless power surged within his body. That power did not belong to him. But with that strength, he could repel the few titular disciples temporarily and had a chance to escape. Evil Intent Devourment. When Dao being Malevolent Earth saw that Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other two titular disciples were disadvantaged in melee combat, he conjured a top-tier dermic art and charged towards Su Zimo. Endless black baneful chi emanated from his fingertips as a gigantic black head materialized in midair. It howled and covered the skies, opening its mouth to devour Su Zimo. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and with a single thought, a massive object appeared beneath his feet. The massive object had 4 feet, 2 heads and carried a gigantic shell that was filled with mysterious runes. It was ancient and seemed as though it could understand all the secrets of the universe. The shell carried the firmaments as its feet stood right into the torrent unyieldingly like heavenly piercing stone pillars. Groar! The snake and turtle reared their heads and howled into the world. The arrival of the black tortoise shook the world. No matter how strong the dermic art that Dao being Malevolent Earth conjured was, it could not devour the black tortoise. The 4 titular disciples were repelled by Su Zimo and Dao being Hidden Death did not dare to show himself. Su Zimo seized the opportunity to grab the severely injured Ming Zhan and burst forth with his lightning escape technique, speeding into the distance. The surrounding cultivators were shocked. Nobody expected that the sacrifice of the pure maiden of the Fiend sex would create a chance for Su Zimo to survive. He might be able to escape alive from the encirclement of the 5 titular disciples. When they saw Su Zimo charging over, the crowd was in chaos and the cultivators dodged in fear. A cultivator with a cold expression hid in the crowd and dodged along with everyone else. However, his gaze was fixed on Su Zimo the entire time. The moment Su Zimo passed by his head, his eyes flashed with a cold glint. Suddenly, he struck and a dense shadow appeared, shrouding towards Su Zimo's back instantly. Su Zimo had a great shock. All his attention was focused on the 5 titular disciples. He had not expected that there would be another cultivator lurking in the crowd. There were way too many people who wanted to kill him in the Dao inheritance ground. Armor-bursting bone corrosion nail. The crowd exclaimed. Poison sect. The armor-bursting bone corrosion nail was one of Poison Sect's 7 lethals and was extremely terrifying. Its penetrative power was shocking and its toxicity was so strong that it could seep into one's bones. There was no way to remove it. Behind Su Zimo, there were at least dozens of armor-bursting bone corrosion nails that blocked all his escape routes. That was a top expert of Poison Sect. There were also a few armor-bursting bone corrosion nails that were aimed at Ming Zhan. Su Zimo pulled Ming Zhan in front of him and tried his best to avoid his vitals. However, he could not avoid the dozens of armor-bursting bone corrosion nails. Poof, poof, poof. Half of it struck his inner armor and fell to the ground. However, 7 to 8 of them pierced his legs. Although his body was strong and the armor-bursting bone corrosion nails could not penetrate it, the poison on the long nails had already entered his body. The heavens are truly bent on killing him. That's right. The one who attacked seemed to be a titular disciple of Poison Sect. With so many of them appearing one after another and attacking him, it's a miracle if he can survive. Including Dao being poison, there were now 6 titular disciples involved in the battle. Su Zimo's body shuddered and the long nails on his legs fell off. He spun around and glared at Dao being poison who was in the crowd. Enraged. His eyes shone with endless killing intent as he said coldly, courting death. Not far away, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others had already caught up. He had to kill Dao being poison within a single move. Otherwise, if he was entangled by Dao being poison, his previous efforts would be wasted once Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others catch up and surround him. 2 flames burned in Su Zimo's eyes as he conjured hand seals with his fingers. A ball of golden flames floated towards the Poison Sect cultivator. Immediately after, Su Zimo conjured another dermic art and a scarlet flame appeared on his fingertip, bursting forth. The Buddhist and Immortal Dao fires. The 2 balls of flames charged towards Dao being poison one after another. Initially, Dao being poison wanted to dodge. However, he could not help but sneer when he sensed the power released by the 2 balls of flames. Although the might of the 2 flames was not small, it was nothing to him. Now that everyone was watching, as a titular disciple, he naturally had to display his capabilities. At that thought, Dao being poison formed hand seals repeatedly and conjured a colorful dermic power python that devoured the 2 incoming flames. When he saw that, Su Zimo's gaze turned cold and his spirit consciousness moved slightly. The Immortal Dao fire that was initially at the back suddenly sped up and collided with the Buddhist Dao fire. This was a transformation in the art of fire taming. If Su Zimo had conjured the Dviadi Dao fire right away, he would have scared off Dao being poison prematurely. The 2 Dao fires stacked together and underwent a qualitative change in an instant, increasing in might. The Dviadi Dao fire. Before Dao being poison's dermic powers and poison python could reach him, they were burned into nothingness by the Dviadi Dao fire. Dao being poison's pupils constricted violently. At this distance, it was already too late for him to dodge. Su Zimo sneered and no longer looked at Dao being poison. Purple lightning flashed on his body and a pair of dermic power wings grew behind him. Carrying Ming Zhan, he fled into the distance with all his might. Behind him, the Dviadi Dao fire struck Dao being poison and burst forth with a gigantic ball of flames. The flames burned and smoke billowed. Dao being poison had already turned into a gigantic fireball as he flailed his arms wildly to struggle. His blood chi surged and dermic powers rumbled as he tried to suppress the Dviadi Dao fire. Squeak, squeak. Countless poisonous beings such as scorpions, toads and spiders fell from his body and shrieked. Before long they were burned to ashes. Before Dao being poison died, the poisonous beings he carried were burned by the Dviadi Dao fire and in their panic, all of them attacked their master. At that moment, countless poisonous beings bit Dao being poison. Even if the Dviadi Dao fire did not manage to burn Dao being poisoned to death, those poisonous beings were enough to kill him. His essence spirit could not escape from the raging flames and was burned to death while hiding in his consciousness. The titular disciple of Poison Sect had fallen in the Dao inheritance ground. Chapter 10-12, Shock of Tianhuang Mainland. Chapter 10-12, Shock of Tianhuang Mainland. Su Zimo carried Ming Zhan and sprinted into the distance. Ming Zhan's injuries were not serious. It was just that while he was fighting against monk Formless, they contended about Buddhism and he was suppressed by the latter, causing him to be disadvantaged. It caused the Dao heart that he was about to condense to show signs of collapsing. If his Dao heart collapsed, some of his past cultivation would be wasted. This was something that nobody could help him with. For cultivators, the test of one's Dao heart was a tribulation. As long as he could tide through this tribulation, he would be invulnerable to evil and mental demons in the future. If he could not cross it, everything would be over. What have I been cultivating for? Ming Zhan murmured softly with a dazed expression. The pursuit of longevity? To enter the Pure Land? He shook his head and denied that thought. The reason why I cultivate Buddhism is to liberate all living beings. However, Monk Formless told me that there are countless people in the world and there's no end to suffering. Yet, a human's strength is limited. How can I possibly liberate them all? That's right, living beings are countless. How am I going to liberate all of them? Is my Tao wrong? Is it true that I can only liberate everyone after I pursue my own Tao and cultivate to become a Buddha? Ming Zhan muttered to himself and interrogated his Tao heart countless times. Throughout the entire process, Su Zimo could clearly sense that his Tao heart had wavered countless times but eventually stabilized. Furthermore, as time passed, the light in Ming Zhan's eyes grew brighter. His gaze was pure and flawless. I don't want to become a Buddha. As though he had made a decision, Ming Zhan's eyes shone with a bright light as he said slowly, only when all living beings are liberated can I attain Buddhahood. I vow that I won't become a Buddha until hell is empty. Ming Zhan laid down a vow and established his Tao heart. Boom! The entire world shuddered. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Immediately after, a gigantic crack appeared beneath his feet, as though it led to the netherworld, dark and sinister. Su Zimo looked over in shock. Beneath the netherworld, there were countless shadows of vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts stretching their arms as though they wanted to break free. However, above the heads of the vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts, there was a monk of the Buddhist monasteries that stood guard. His body shone with a sacred golden light and his expression was filled with benevolence. His eyes were filled with compassion as though he could transcend all the suffering in the world. All of a sudden, the monk of the Buddhist monasteries opened his mouth. Only when all living beings are liberated can I attain Buddhahood. I vow that I won't become a Buddha until hell is empty. Anyone that lays down this vow shall obtain my inheritance. Swoosh! A blinding golden light burst forth from the monk's body and shone on Ming Zhan. Ming Zhan's eyes were tightly shut and he had a peaceful expression. Like a sleeping baby, he followed the golden light uncontrollably and fell into the crack. Bang! Boom! Boom! By the time the cracks on the ground closed, Ming Zhan and the monk from the Buddhist sect had already vanished. At the same time, Tianhuang Mainland. Suddenly, a voice sounded from above the firmaments. Only when all living beings are liberated can I attain Buddhahood. I vow that I won't become a Buddha until hell is empty. Many cultivators were shocked when they heard that. Someone had established a Tao heart that penetrated the dimension of the Tao inheritance ground and affected Tianhuang Mainland. 100 Refinement Sect. Extreme Fire and the others who were initially gathered in the main hall walked out one after another when they heard the commotion outside and looked up. Someone has obtained the inheritance of the Buddhist sect's Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Shock flashed through Shangguanzi's eyes. Extreme Fire nodded. That's right. Legend has it that when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva of the upper world established his Tao, he made a great vow that he would never attain Buddhahood until hell was empty. I wonder who is the one with such a compassionate heart to inherit Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's vow and shock Tianhuang Mainland. Ksitigarbha Golden Body. Elder Gu looked as though he was reminiscing. To think that this legacy that has been lost through the ages is finally about to reappear. The next Dharma characteristic ranking will definitely be something to look out for. Right then, a cultivator fell out of the teleportation gate behind him, panting heavily. That person was the 100 Refinement Sect disciple who followed Tao being Yu Ding into the Tao inheritance ground. Extreme Fire and the others hurried into the main hall and asked, "How is it? Any news?" Elders. The cultivator gulped and could not hide the shock in his eyes. Panting, he said, "Not long after Granduncle Master entered the Tao inheritance ground, he fought against Sword Sect's cultivators and killed all of them." Shangguanzi and the others exchanged glances and nodded to themselves. To think that Su Zimo would be able to release such terrifying combat strength despite the fact that his demonic methods were suppressed in the Tao inheritance ground. On the other hand, Extreme Fire had a calm expression. Sword Sect had not sent their titular disciple after all. Even with the 7 luminary sword formation, they would not be much of a threat to Su Zimo. The 100 Refinement Sect cultivator continued. A day later, Granduncle Master encountered Tao being glass and killed him. At that point, Extreme Fire and everyone else were shocked. To think that apart from Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect and the other sects, Glass Palace had sent their titular disciple inside as well. What was even more unexpected was that the titular disciple of Glass Palace was killed by Su Zimo at the Dao Inheritance Ground. "He's too strong." Elder Goose sucked in a cold breath of air and said, "This lad is going to step on the corpses of the titular disciples and establish his Dao heart to forge a supreme great Dao." The 100 Refinement Sect disciple continued, Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder, Monk Formless, Dao being Malevolent Earth and Dao being Hidden Death joined forces and set up a trap to kill Granduncle Master. "Ah!" Extreme Fire and the others exclaimed in shock. What they were worried about had happened. If the 5 titular disciples joined forces, he would definitely die. Later on, Granduncle Master obtained the help of 2 titular disciples, the pure maiden of the Fiend sex and Dao being Dapamkara, and managed to escape. Thereafter, he was ambushed by the titular disciple of Poison sect but he retaliated and killed Dao being Poison instead before escaping. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they heard the news. It was just a simple description but it was already so shocking and exciting. One could imagine how dangerous the situation was back then. 2 titular disciples were buried in the Dao Inheritance Ground. Shangguanzi looked worried and shook her head. "This is quite heaven-defying. I'm afraid a great calamity is coming." "There's no need for a calamity." Elder Goose shook his head. The lad might not even be able to get past the tribulations before him. Even Poison sect themselves can't dispel their own 7 lethals. How far can he escape? "Don't forget, Dean hasn't appeared yet." Elder Goose shook his head and sighed. Everyone frowned with worried expressions. No matter how one looked at it, Su Zimo's life was hanging by a thread. Any change could be the last straw that destroys him. At the same time, news of the Dao Inheritance Ground spread to Tianhuang Mainland one after another and the entire cultivation world was stirred. So many titular disciples entered the Dao Inheritance Ground but 2 of them were killed by a nascent soul instead. This was definitely an unprecedented event in history. It was not only 100 Refinement Sect. At that moment, almost all the factions in Tianhuang Mainland were paying attention to the news in the Dao Inheritance Ground. Everyone wanted to know how long the #1 monster incarnate of history who caused a bloodbath in the Dao Inheritance Ground could last. Chapter 1013, Di Yin's Appearance. Chapter 1013, Di Yin's Appearance. The Dao Inheritance Ground. Now that Ming Zhan had obtained the inheritance and entered deep underground, he was naturally safe from danger and Su Zimo was relieved. The sound of thunder could be heard from afar. That single delay had allowed Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others to catch up. Gritting his teeth, Su Zimo determined his direction and sped towards the 3 Tribulations domain. Right now, he could only resolve the crisis by entering the 3 Tribulations domain. Once inside the 3 Tribulations domain, cultivators could not engage in fights. This was because the ancient mighty figures wanted to prevent cultivators from being disturbed as they transcended the tribulations. However, Su Zimo did not know if he could make it to the 3 Tribulations domain. The poison of the armor-bursting bone corrosion nail had already taken effect. If not for his strong and shocking physique, the poison would have corroded his bones and he would have died long ago. In reality, if Su Zimo could use his blood chi, there was a high chance he could neutralize the poison by washing it away continuously with the power of his blood chi. But now, his blood chi was condensed within his body and could not be activated at all. He could only watch as the poison spread continuously and corroded him. At that moment, his legs were already numb. If his legs were numb, it meant that the armor-bursting bone corrosion nail's poison had already seeped into his bones. Even if he recovered his blood chi, he might not be able to save them. Before long, a figure appeared before them. He wore purple robes and had shoulder-length black hair. His back was facing Su Zimo and his face could not be seen clearly. However, that mere back view stood there like an insurmountable mountain, towering and majestic as it blocked Su Zimo's path forward. Su Zimo's heart sank. Although he could not see the purple-robed cultivator's appearance clearly, he was all too familiar with the aura of a ruler overlooking the ages. It was Dao being Chaos Essence, Dean. To think that Dean would appear at the final moment. This was akin to someone who had gone through a lot of hardships and was about to climb out of the abyss only to find out that he had merely crawled into a deeper pit. There was an even larger abyss above him. Even when he had just entered the Dao inheritance ground, Su Zimo had no confidence against Di Yin. Furthermore, both his essence spirits were injured and his body was in intense pain right now with his legs gradually losing sensation. Fellow Taoist Su, how have you been? Di Yin turned around slowly and smiled at Su Zimo, who was covered in blood and looked wretched. Su Zimo's expression was cold and he said nothing. With a chuckle, Di Yin walked towards Su Zimo slowly, saying leisurely, "It's truly unbelievable." This was the #1 of the Phenomenon ranking who was all famous and mighty back in Myriad Phenomenon City? Why have you been reduced to such a state? Where's your illumination dragon eye? Why are you not undergoing dragonification with your demon blood? Di Yin laughed. At that moment, he was smiling from the bottom of his heart. It felt good to be in control of everything. This was especially the case when the great enemy that had brought him endless humiliation and almost killed him was standing right in front of him. A single thought of his was the difference between the latter's life and death. Throughout history, there have been countless paragons and monster incarnates. However, there aren't many who manage to reach the end. Di Yin said indifferently, "Su Zimo, you're destined to die prematurely." Boom! The killing intent in Di Yin's eyes intensified as he opened his palm and crushed down on Su Zimo's chest like a gigantic millstone. The Great Chaos Essence Palm. Chaos Essence Sec's exclusive secret skill. Just as Su Zimo wanted to defend, he realized that his legs were numb. It had finally come to this. There was no sensation in his legs and therefore, he no longer had support for his strength. He would not be able to withstand the Great Chaos Essence Palm with the pure burst power of his physical body. In a flash, Su Zimo wanted to form a dermic art. However, a tearing pain came from his essence spirit within his consciousness. Before the dermic art was formed, it dissipated. Di Yin's eyes flashed with mockery. Bang! He pressed his palm against Su Zimo's chest and released mincing force that was berserk and violent. Shing! Instantly, Su Zimo's green robes were torn. The perfect grade inner armor on his body could only hold on for a moment before it was crushed into pieces by the power of the Great Chaos Essence Palm and fell shard after shard. A perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon could not withstand the power of Di Yin's palm. Di Yin was even more terrifying than 100 years ago. Not only that, the remaining power of the Great Chaos Essence Palm converged and surged into Su Zimo's body, shattering the power that Demonis Ji gave him. Su Zimo fell not far away and coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. His organs were already ruptured by Di Yin's palm. "It's over for you." Di Yin strode towards Su Zimo leisurely. Right then, a figure barged in, grabbed Su Zimo who was on the ground and sprinted into the distance. Di Yin had already caught sight of that figure a long time ago. However, he did not expect that someone would dare to snatch away Su Zimo from right beneath his nose. "Master, hang in there. I'll take you away." Solitary Cloud hugged Su Zimo and with the burst of his physical body, sprinted on the ground, looking clumsy and pitiful. "Master, let's return to Howling Moon Mountain. There's Monkey, the spirit tiger and little fox there. Nobody will dare to hurt you there." Gazing at Su Zimo who was coughing out blood repeatedly, Solitary Cloud's eyes were bloodshot and his expression was sorrowful. Su Zimo's consciousness was starting to blur by now. "Solitary Cloud, you. Let go of me. I'll escape by myself." His gaze was slightly unfocused as he spoke intermittently. The blood in his mouth flowed continuously in a frightening manner. "Master, stop talking. I won't leave." Solitary Cloud said loudly, "I've once sworn to follow you through life and death. I'll do what I say and never leave." "You don't know who Di Yin is." Su Zimo tried his best to perk himself up so that he would not faint. Panting, he said, "If he wants to attack, you won't be able to escape. You can only survive if you abandon me." "You're mistaken." Di Yin's voice suddenly sounded in Solitary Cloud's ears. That aura sent a chill down his spine. "Even if he leaves you now, he won't be able to escape." With a sinister smile, Di Yin struck and slapped Solitary Cloud heavily on the back. Poof! Solitary Cloud's chest was penetrated by Di Yin's palm and an arrow of blood spurted out. The scarlet, boiling blood splattered on Su Zimo's face, startling him and clearing his mind a little. Solitary Cloud. Su Zimo shouted and reached out in a panic, wanting to block the blood on Solitary Cloud's chest. However, he could not stop the blood from gushing out. Solitary Cloud's heart was already shattered and his essence spirit was filled with cracks. The bones in Solitary Cloud's chest were all broken. However, he still widened his eyes and staggered forward with whatever willpower he had left. Right from the beginning, he did not let go of Su Zimo's arms. One step after another. Finally, Solitary Cloud's body swayed as he lowered his gaze and murmured, "Master, I can't hold on anymore. I can only bring you here." Solitary Cloud. Su Zimo's voice trembled and he could no longer hold it in as tears streamed down his clothes. Chapter 10:14. Another Wave. Chapter 10:14. Another Wave. Does this hurt? When Diin saw Su Zimo's current state, he could not help but burst into laughter from the thrill of revenge. He enjoyed the feeling right now. The more pain Su Zimo was in, the happier he was. "Do you remember what I said back in the ancient battlefield?" Diin looked down at Su Zimo from above and said slowly, "I've already said that I'll definitely take revenge on you the day we meet again." Su Zimo grit his teeth and remained silent. With reddened eyes, he controlled his spirit consciousness and pulled Solitary Cloud into his storage bag bit by bit. That simple action caused a tearing pain in his essence spirit and he almost fainted. If Solitary Cloud had not been by his side and absorbed the dragon chi to cultivate, causing his bloodline to become much stronger, Solitary Cloud would have been destroyed in body and spirit by Diin's palm strike. Right now, although Solitary Cloud was not dead, he could not hold on for much longer. Diin's palm strike had almost crippled his body completely. His heart and sternum were shattered and all life in his body was gone. Only his essence spirit still had a trace of life and emitted a faint glow. At this rate, Solitary Cloud's essence spirit would probably dim for eternity within 2 hours. Even though Su Zimo's life was hanging by a thread right now, he had not given up on Solitary Cloud. Even if there was only a sliver of hope for survival, he had to leave with Solitary Cloud. It was not just Solitary Cloud's vow to follow him through life and death. He made the same promise to Solitary Cloud. Sigh to think that Su Zimo would still die in Diin's hands at the end of the day. Including the fallen Dao being glass and Dao being poison as well as Diin, he was attacked by a total of 8 titular disciples. Even void reversions or dharma characteristics would have to die here, let alone a nascent soul. Although this battle was way too unfair for Su Zimo, the victors have the final say. There's nothing much we can comment about. After today, I'm afraid no one will be able to threaten Diin anymore. At that moment, there were already many cultivators gathered nearby with complex expressions. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others arrived nearby as well. They did not step forward and merely watched coldly from the sidelines. "Actually, you don't have to suffer." Diin did not want to delay any longer and walked towards Su Zimo, saying indifferently, "That's because I'll fulfill your wishes and send you guys to the netherworld together." Boom! He reached out and conjured a gigantic millstone that crushed down towards Su Zimo. All of a sudden, a dark light tore through the air and expanded rapidly in midair, as though it had transformed into a pitch-black brick. It shone with 6 dermic patterns and smashed towards Diin's palm. A connate Dao being dermic weapon. Diin's gaze intensified as killing intent surged in his eyes. There was someone that dared to attack him. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd as well. Who was Diin? In the cultivation world, he might only be a titular disciple. But here in the Dao inheritance ground, he was the king and emperor. If the emperor was angered, millions of people had to die. Even Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples were wary of Diin and stopped in their tracks. Which cultivator in this Dao inheritance ground would be ignorant enough to dare attack him? "You must have a death wish." Even though he was bare-handed against the connate Dao being dermic weapon, Diin had no intention of stopping. His blood chi surged and his dermic powers surged as the might of the chaos essence palm doubled. Boom! The gigantic millstone conjured by Diin's palm collided with the black brick and an earth-shaking bang sounded. At the point of collision, air current surged and gravel filled the air. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples were shocked and their pupils constricted. Diyin was even scarier than they had imagined. Among all the titular disciples, including the fallen Dao being glass, Diyin was probably the only one who dared to receive a connate dermic weapon bare-handed. Both parties clashed head-on and Diyin did not retreat at all. However, the black brick flew back and landed in the hands of a cultivator who was charging over. The intruder was dressed in a grey Taoist robe. He was fair, beardless and slightly plump, but he was extremely agile. The moment the intruder blocked Diyin with the black brick, he rushed forward and flipped Su Zimo on his back. Without turning back he ran. "Oh, it's you." Diyin's gaze was sinister and he was enraged. In a flash, he sped forward. His figure tore through the air with a speed that was so fast and ferocious that shuddering, buzzing sounds could be heard. "Even if you're the successor of Enigma Palace, I'll kill you here today if you dare to ruin my plans." Diyin chased after the grey-robed cultivator. His voice was chilling and his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. He had to kill Su Zimo in the Dao inheritance ground and not allow any accidents to happen. He would kill anyone who stood in his way. The successor of Enigma Palace has appeared as well. Is Su Zimo related to Enigma Palace? By the looks of it, the successor of Enigma Palace isn't Diyin's match either. He escaped after a single exchange. When they saw that, many cultivators were invigorated and started discussing once more. Enigma Palace was the most mysterious supersect in Tianhuang Mainland. 9 immortal sects, 8 demon regions, and finally 2 islands and 1 palace. That palace referred to Enigma Palace. The successor of Enigma Palace was equivalent to the titular disciples of the supersections. However, they rarely participated in such battles. Be it the Golden Core Phenomenon ranking or the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking, none of the successors of Enigma Palace would take part. Therefore, the successors of each generation of Enigma Palace were the most mysterious existences in the eyes of the cultivators. Nobody knew their true strength. However, seniors of the various major sects would remind their disciples to try their best not to be enemies with the successor of Enigma Palace. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples frowned and followed hurriedly. It was already a foregone conclusion that Su Zimo would die. There was no way something could happen because of a successor of Enigma Palace. As the grey-robed cultivator sprinted, he heard the sound of wind behind him as a powerful and berserk aura approached rapidly. He glanced sideways. Diyin was not far behind him with a grim expression that was filled with killing intent. His movement technique was frighteningly fast and he would catch up in a few breaths. Fuck! The grey-robed cultivator jolted in shock. He swiped his storage bag and took out a dirty and tattered bag. He muttered something and tossed it behind him. The tattered bag fluttered and expanded continuously, trapping Diyin who was charging over. The opening of the bag shrank rapidly. Ah! Diyin's furious roar sounded from the bag, causing one's heart to tremble. The successor of Enigma Palace sure has some skills. He seems to have trapped Diyin. A cultivator exclaimed. The grey-robed cultivator grinned and turned to continue running. That was because he knew that although the tattered bag was a unique treasure, it was not enough to trap Diyin. Before long, a howl sounded behind him. Let's see where in the world you can escape to. Diyin ripped the bag apart and broke free. Killing intent surged from his body as he chased after the grey-robed cultivator furiously. Chapter 10:15, The Only Lifelines. Chapter 10:15, The Only Lifeline. Brother Lin, you're here too. Lying on the back of the grey-robed cultivator, Su Zimo consumed a large amount of elixirs and the medicinal effects surged into his body. He was in a better state now and spoke softly. The successor of Enigma Palace was none other than Lin Xuanji. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Ever since Su Zimo started cultivating, he did not have many friends. Among these people, some of them were cynical, some were honest, some were cold and murderous, and some were just happy-go-lucky. Their personalities were different and the Dao techniques they cultivated were different as well. Immortal, Buddhist, Fiend and heretical. However, there were similarities between them. Every single one of them was true and loyal. Demonist Ji, Ming Zhan and Lin Xuanji were the same. Even Solitary Cloud was the same. For Demonis Ji and Ming Zhan, it was a blessing in disguise since they managed to obtain the inheritance of a mighty figure. As for Solitary Cloud, Su Zimo's heart ached at the thought of Solitary Cloud. Lin Xuanji asked with a worried expression, "Brother Su, how are you?" "Not bad." Su Zimo forced himself to focus and replied. Actually, he was in a bad state. His organs were already ruptured and his essence spirit was severely injured. The bone corrosion poison on his legs had already seeped into his marrow and was spreading gradually. Su Zimo's spirit consciousness stirred and he retrieved a small bottle from his storage bag, pouring out an elixir. Lin Xuanji glanced at it from the corner of his eyes with a delighted expression. Life preservation elixir. That's a good thing. Swallow it quickly and you'll at least be able to preserve your life. We'll talk about it after you escape. Su Zimo did not say anything and placed the life preservation elixir carefully into Solitary Cloud's mouth instead. The life preservation elixir could keep Solitary Cloud alive for a month at least. Fuck! Lin Xuanji's eyes widened and he was so anxious that he nearly stomped his feet as he shouted, "Are you stupid? You can't hold on for much longer and you're still going to care about that WRM." "I am fine." Su Zimo's lips twitched as he smiled. "But he can't die." "How are you fine? How much longer can you last in your current state? How are you going to neutralize the bone corrosion poison in your body?" The reason why they're called the 7 lethals of Poison Sect is because even Poison Sect doesn't have an antidote for those 7 poisons and one will definitely die if they're poisoned. If not for the fact that he was being hunted down by Dean, Lin Xuanji really wanted to throw Su Zimo down and bash him up. "The injuries are a little serious but I'll probably survive them." Su Zimo could still smile. Although his bloodline was suppressed and could not be circulated, it was still within his body and was still terrifyingly strong and invulnerable to poison. It was impossible for the bone corrosion poison to poison him to death. However, it was almost impossible for him to remove the bone corrosion poison from his body as well. At the very least, given his current condition and methods, there was no way he could do it. "Brother Su, you have to hold on. I've already offended Dean now. If you die, I'll be in deep shit and this will be a wasted trip." Lin Xuanji muttered as he carried Su Zimo on his back, as though he was afraid that Su Zimo would faint and not wake up. "My master divined that you're going to face a calamity this time round, so I hurried over." Honestly, that old man is getting more muddle-headed as he ages and spouts useless nonsense. Bloody hell. Even if I think with my arse, I can tell that you're going to face a calamity by entering the Dao inheritance ground to face so many titular disciples. Who the hell even needs to divine it? Initially, Su Zimo was about to fall asleep. However, he could not help but chuckle when he heard how amusing Lin Xuanji was. He knew that Lin Xuanji was thinking of ways to save him and keep him awake. Lin Xuanji turned back to take a look and was so scared that his face turned pale as he scolded, "Fuck! Dean is chasing us so closely like a mad dog. This is deadly." His movement technique could not compare to Dean. If he had not used that tattered bag earlier to delay Dean for a while, the latter would have caught up to him long ago. "Brother Lin, listen to me." Su Zimo perked up and raised his arm slightly, pointing in a direction. "Go there." Ah. Stunned for a moment, Lin Xuanji was delighted. "Brother Su, you've got a backup plan over there? Impressive, brilliant." Without hesitation, Lin Xuanji changed directions and sprinted. After escaping for a while more, Lin Xuanji gradually realized that something was amiss and frowned. "Brother Su, what backup plans do you have here? We seem to be headed for the 3 Tribulations domain?" "It is the 3 Tribulations domain." Su Zimo said, "Throw me into the 3 Tribulations domain and leave this place. Dean wants to kill me, not you." "Are you crazy?" Lin Xuanji shouted. "You still want to challenge the 3 Tribulations domain in your current state? What's the difference between challenging the 3 Tribulations domain and killing yourself right now?" The 3 Tribulations domain tests a cultivator's Dao heart. Although I'm severely injured, my Dao heart is still present. Su Zimo's tone was resolute as he said slowly, "I'll definitely be able to obtain an inheritance within the 3 Tribulations domain." "But..." Lin Xuanji was still worried. Su Zimo continued, "Furthermore, I'm currently poisoned. Given my current condition and methods, there's no way I can neutralize it. Ah, you want to borrow the power of the Three Tribulations domain. Lin Xuanji's eyes lit up. That's right. Su Zimo replied, the only way I can purge the bone corrosion poison that has already seeped into my bones is with the use of external force. But that's too painful. Lin Xuanji shuddered at the mere thought. Su Zimo said, Brother Lin, the Three Tribulations domain is my only chance. Sensing Su Zimo's determination, Lin Xuanji grit his teeth. Let's go, I'll take you to the Three Tribulations domain. If you die in there and turn into a wandering ghost, don't come looking for me for revenge. Don't worry. Su Zimo smiled gently. Since he had already made that decision, he no longer hesitated. Lin Xuanji took a deep breath and sped in the direction of the Three Tribulations domain. Before long, a massive frost region appeared on the horizon in front of them. Cold winds howled from within, connecting the heavens and earth, sweeping up gales with a terrifying might. Where are they going? Are they going to barge into the Three Tribulations domain? Isn't that just courting death? I reckon that Su Zimo would rather die in the Three Tribulations domain than be killed by Devour. The cultivators discussed and gathered over. Before long, Lin Xuanji arrived at the borders of the Three Tribulations domain. Brother Su, I can only send you here. Lin Xuanji stopped in his tracks and panted slightly. There was a layer of sweat on his forehead after all the sprinting. He knew that this farewell might very well be their last. Send me in. Su Zimo endured the pain on his body and smiled. Don't worry, we'll meet again. Brother Su, farewell. Gritting his teeth, Lin Xuanji pulled Su Zimo off his back and tossed him into the Three Tribulations domain. Instantly, Su Zimo was drowned by the cold wind and disappeared. The cold wind inside was laced with frost that could isolate spirit consciousness and vision. Cultivators on the outside would not be able to tell what was going on inside. Even inside, visibility was extremely low. Lin Xuanji tossed Su Zimo into the Three Tribulations domain and fled to the side. Challenging the Three Tribulations domain. Devour arrived at the borders of the Three Tribulations domain and ignored Lin Xuanji, who was beside him. He merely sneered. It's just a momentary delay. I want to see how long you can last in the Three Tribulations domain. After a moment of hesitation, Devour charged into the Three Tribulations domain as well. Immediately after, Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder, Monk Formless and Dao being Malevolent Earth arrived as well. Even Dao being Hidden Death had appeared. The 5 titular disciples exchanged glances and with a tacit understanding, entered the Three Tribulations domain at almost the same time. Chapter 1016, Bone-Piercing Wind. Chapter 1016, Bone-Piercing Wind. When they saw that, the cultivators were shocked. 6 titular disciples are barging into the Three Tribulations domain just for Su Zimo. This is an unprecedented sight. Su Zimo's death is a foregone conclusion. The only reason why the 6 titular disciples followed him in was to split the treasures. Although cultivators were not allowed to fight within the Three Tribulations domain, if the cultivators inside died, the treasures that fell would naturally become ownerless. Anyone who saw them could take them away at any moment. Some cultivators who could not contain their curiosity entered the Three Tribulations domain as well. However, most of them walked out trembling the moment they entered. Some of the cultivators were pale and their beards were filled with frost as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Some cultivators were already injured and the blood they coughed out was filled with ice shards. The Three Tribulations domain was not a place where everyone could attempt. Even so, there were still more and more cultivators gathered here. Most of them stood outside, awaiting the final outcome. Middle Continent, 100 Refinement Sect. Avoid Reversion retreated from the Dao Inheritance Ground in advance, and recounted everything that happened within in detail. The entire hall was silent. Poisoned and severely injured by Devour, he entered the Three Tribulations domain with his current fate unknown. None of those news were beneficial to Su Zimo. Everyone had grim expressions and remained silent. All of them knew that by entering the Three Tribulations domain at that moment, It was equivalent to Su Zimo declaring his death. Throughout history, no one had been able to pass through the Three Tribulations domain. However, Su Zimo had no way out. Behind him were 6 titular disciples. He would die whether he advanced or retreated. Extreme Fire's expression was terrible and his eyes burned with endless rage. A moment later, Shangguanzi sighed softly. Now we can only leave it up to fate. At the same time, news of what happened in the Dao inheritance ground spread to Tianhuang Mainland one after another. The entire cultivation world was in an uproar. Diin did not manage to kill Su Zimo and the latter managed to escape to the Three Tribulations domain. This Su Zimo sure is lucky. There shouldn't be any unforeseen circumstances this time round. Once he enters the Three Tribulations domain, Su Zimo will have no way out. He can only continue forward. That's right. Throughout history, there have been countless paragons and monster incarnates, but no one has been able to clear the Three Tribulations domain. Furthermore, I heard that he's already poisoned and is severely injured. The strongest monster incarnate in history failed to create a legend in the end and will soon vanish into thin air. The moment Su Zimo entered the Three Tribulations domain, he felt a piercing chill and a layer of frost formed on his body. Ooh! A cold wind blew in his face. The wind was even more powerful than divine weapons and pierced through Su Zimo's flesh and organs like steel needles. His face was pale as he grit his teeth and curled up in pain. His internal organs were already severely injured to begin with. At that moment, frost started forming on them as the extreme north-east wind blew against them. Su Zimo could not feel his legs. He could only rely on his arms to support himself as he crawled forward bit by bit. His body was shivering but his gaze was resolute. The deeper they went, the more vicious the Een wind became. Initially, the Een wind resembled steel needles. Towards the end, the Een wind was like a saber and a sharp blade that slashed across Su Zimo's body repeatedly. The Een wind was as sharp as a knife and caused the pain of death. The pain was not something that anyone could endure. Poof, poof, poof. Su Zimo's body was already riddled with wounds by the Een wind. Before blood could be seen, his wounds were already frozen. He was right. The original intention of the Three Tribulations domain was to test a cultivator's Dao heart. However, the first 2 tests, the extreme north-east wind and the red Lotus Karmic flame, tested the cultivator's body and will. Without a strong physique and a will that could endure endless pain, nobody would be able to gain the acknowledgement of the ancient mighty figures. The further inside, the stronger the Een wind was. In the end, the Een wind had already penetrated Su Zimo's flesh and blood, slicing against his bones with an ear-piercing sound. The Een wind was bone-piercing. Su Zimo was in so much pain that his body was convulsing. Even so, he did not make a single sound. Suddenly, his eyes lit with joy. Initially, his legs were corroded by the bone corrosion poison and he could not feel anything. However, as the Een wind continued to blow against his bones, his legs began to feel pain. It became clearer and fiercer. Su Zimo was in so much pain that his facial features were distorted. However, he still smiled. This meant that he could indeed purge the bone corrosion poison with the help of the extreme north-east wind. Su Zimo endured the pain and struggled to stand up from the ground. With a resolute gaze, he headed deeper into the Three Tribulations domain. Behind him, 6 figures were advancing with difficulty. Although Diin and the others were titular disciples, they had to endure the torture of the Een wind as well after entering the Three Tribulations domain. The wind sliced them a cut after another. Every single slash struck the bone. Every single step they took caused the 6 of them to tremble. However, they continued to persevere and stared intently at the figure that was crawling forward. They waited for the figure to stop. They did not believe that they would not be able to outlast a nascent soul who was poisoned and severely injured. However, before long, under their watchful gazes, the figure stood up amidst the surging cold wind and walked forward step by step. Dao, being malevolent earth, could not hold it in any longer and wanted to curse out loud. However, a Een wind blew into his mouth instantly, causing wounds to appear. He had to swallow his remaining words. What a lunatic! He hollered internally. Dao, being hidden death, walked slower and slower and was already thinking of retreating. His original goal was to assassinate Su Zimo. The reason why he entered the Three Tribulations domain was because he wanted to see if he could fish in troubled waters and snatch one or two of Su Zimo's treasures. But now, he no longer wanted to persist. If he continued, he might even die in the extreme north wind before he could get his hands on Su Zimo's treasures. No matter what, Su Zimo's death was absolute. His goal could be considered accomplished. At that thought, Dao being hidden death stopped in his tracks and retreated slowly. When Dao being malevolent earth saw Dao being hidden death retreat, he was swayed as well. Among the 6 titular disciples, Dean was the only one who did not waver and continued advancing. Getting his hands on Su Zimo's treasures was only one of the reasons. More importantly, he had to witness Su Zimo's death before he could feel at ease. This time round, he managed to lure Su Zimo into the Dao inheritance ground. If he could not kill the latter here, he would not get another opportunity as such in the future. The wind howled with a chilling aura as the number of wounds on Su Zimo's body increased in a shocking manner. The pain in his legs intensified. However, it was as though Su Zimo could not sense it as his footsteps became firmer. If he wanted to establish a Dao, he was bound to endure endless suffering and danger. These sufferings and dangers would temper his Dao heart continuously. It would eventually transform him and allow him to be reborn, forming a supreme Dao heart that did not fear heaven and earth, ghosts or fiends. Chapter 1017, Karmic Flame Incineration. Chapter 1017, Karmic Flame Incineration. Outside the Three Tribulations domain. More and more cultivators gathered and looked inside. They've been inside for an hour, right? Nobody's come out yet. Could Su Zimo still be alive? These titular disciples are truly terrifying. We can't even take a few breaths inside. To think that they can last that long. Look, someone's coming out. A figure gradually became clear and walked out of the Three Tribulations domain. It was Dao being hidden death who was covered in frost. Dao being hidden death stood at the edge of the Three Tribulations domain expressionlessly and tried his best to recover his blood chi. He swallowed a few elixirs before letting out a long breath. After calming down for a long time, his figure swayed and gradually faded before everyone's eyes. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. It had to be admitted that this concealment technique was absolutely unfathomable and could even deceive the heavens. Dao being hidden death had not left. He was still waiting for the final outcome. After another 15 minutes, another figure appeared from the Three Tribulations domain. Dao being malevolent earth. He was not in a good condition either, shivering as though he had suffered quite a bit. Even his breath contained frost in it. He really could not hold on any longer. The reason why Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the others could persevere was because they had some obsession in their hearts. Dao being Heavenly Dipper wanted Su Zimo's divine phoenix bone. Dao being Zephyr Thunder wanted the Purple Thunder Manual. Monk Formless wanted the Creation Green Lotus and the Daming True Sutra. As for Dean, he wanted to kill Su Zimo personally. The obsession of Dean and the others did not exist in the Dao being Malevolent Earth's heart. He had already established his Dao heart long ago, and obtained the inheritance of a conjoint body mighty figure. He truly did not want to endure such pain anymore. In the Dao inheritance ground, as long as one established their Dao heart and obtained the inheritance of a conjoint body mighty figure, there would be no more inheritance. 2 of the 6 titular disciples have already come out. To think that Su Zimo is still alive. I'm truly curious how much longer he can last. Many cultivators were still waiting patiently. Within the Three Tribulations domain, Su Zimo traveled deeper and deeper through the extreme north wind. His body was already covered in wounds from the wind and his originally delicate and handsome appearance was completely disfigured by now. Su Zimo was oblivious and his gaze was resolute. He did not waver at all. The bone corrosion poison on his legs had already been partially removed by the extreme north wind. However, the extreme north wind could not penetrate his marrow and could not purge away the bone corrosion poison that had seeped in. Su Zimo was not worried. He believed that there would be a solution eventually. Behind him, apart from Dean, Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Monk Formless were walking slower and slower. The three of them looked at Su Zimo's blurry figure in the cold wind with hatred and indignance in their eyes. Not everyone could endure the bone-piercing pain of the Yin wind. By now, the three of them had already reached their limits. Dao being Zephyr Thunder paused with a dark expression. At this point, he could only give up on the Purple Thunder manual. As a titular disciple, if he were to die here because of a single cultivation technique, he would become the greatest joke in the cultivation world. He chose to withdraw. After persisting for a while more, Monk Formless could not take it anymore either and turned to leave. There were only 3 people left in the 3 Tribulations domain. Su Zimo, Di-Yin and Dao being Heavenly Dipper. Finally, after 4 hours, the first tribulation was about to pass. In Dao being Heavenly Dipper's line of sight, there was no longer a howling Yin wind at the front. Instead, there was nothing but a desert. Arriving at the edge of the desert, Su Zimo strode in without hesitation. The moment he entered, his expression changed. Suddenly, his body turned hot and his temperature rose continuously. His entire body creaked as though his bones were about to explode. The red lotus karmic flame was triggered by a cultivator's greed, anger, and obsession, burning from inside out within him. Swoosh! A ball of flames ignited within Su Zimo's body and grew larger, emerging from his organs and skin. His eyes, ears, mouth and nose were spewing flames. This was due to the sudden change from extreme coldness to extreme heat. The 2 energies clashed within Su Zimo's body. This was 10 times more painful than the bone-piercing Yin wind earlier on. Looking at Su Zimo, who had already turned into a flaming man in the desert but had yet to stop, Dao being Heavenly Dipper had a frightened expression and truly did not want to follow. This person was definitely a lunatic. He chose to give up as well. Di-Yin was the only one left among the 6 titular disciples. Standing at the edge of the desert, Di-Yin grit his teeth and charged in as well as he gazed at Su Zimo, who was blazing with flames. Swoosh! A ball of flames rose within his body as well. Cultivators could not avoid greed, anger and obsession during their cultivation. Their bodies were bound to be tainted by karma and karmic returns. No one could stop the karmic flames. Ugh! Di-Yin grunted. The pain of the karmic flames almost made him turn and leave. However, right after, he withstood it with his strong endurance and walked forward, following closely behind Su Zimo. The karmic flames purged away the coldness in Su Zimo's body. The blood that was initially frozen began to melt as well. Under the scorching heat of the karmic flames, his flesh and blood exploded one after another. From afar, he looked like a blood-colored lotus that was shocking. As Su Zimo traveled through the desert, thousands of red lotuses bloomed on his body. His flesh and spirit chi were withering and burned to ashes by the karmic flames. Su Zimo's storage bag was gripped in his right palm. With the protection of the divine phoenix bone, his storage bag was fine. Against the endless pain, Su Zimo advanced step by step, leaving a series of blood-colored footprints behind him. As he ventured deeper into the desert, the karmic flames burned brighter. Su Zimo's entire body turned into a gigantic fireball that was scarlet red. The karmic flames not only burned his flesh, but his bones as well. His bones were burned red and almost transparent. Under the calcination of the karmic flames, the marrow within them was boiling. The bone corrosion poison that had seeped into his marrow initially was burned to ashes by the karmic flames. The bone-cutting Yin wind and calcination of the karmic flames purged the bone corrosion poison from within Su Zimo's body entirely. Sensing the changes in his body, Su Zimo was invigorated and howled into the skies in the desert. The karmic flames spewing from his mouth seemed like they were about to transform into a divine dragon that soared into the skies. The tempering of the wind and fire tribulations strengthened Su Zimo's determination. He was no longer afraid. Di-Yin's footsteps gradually slowed down. He could not hold on either. His expression was cold as he watched Su Zimo leave. Even the karmic flames burning in his body could not burn away the killing intent in his eyes. So what if you can survive the wind and fire tribulations? I don't believe that you can survive the Dao heart lightning tribulation. Di-Yin chanted internally and suppressed the indignance in his heart before turning to leave. Su Zimo was the only one remaining to advance in the 3 tribulations domain. After an unknown period of time, It was as though a gigantic lightning pool was suspended in the firmaments ahead.
It shone brightly and thunder rumbled in a shocking manner.
Su Zimo had finally reached the final tribulation. Looking at the lightning pool before him, Su Zimo took a deep breath and strode in without hesitation. Chapter 10:18. Shocking the World. Chapter 10:18. Shocking the World. The lightning pool hovered above the firmaments. It was initially calm without any ripples. However, the moment Su Zimo stepped into the lightning domain, the lightning pool seemed to have been triggered by something. Instantly, waves surged violently with a terrifying might. Bang! Boom! Boom! Thunder rumbled in a depressing manner. All of a sudden, lightning flashed in a bedazzling manner as a gigantic thunderbolt appeared in the void and struck Su Zimo. Bang! Su Zimo was sent flying by the thunderbolt and somersaulted in midair before landing on the ground and spitting out a mouthful of blood. The pain was indescribable. Su Zimo felt that he could disintegrate at any moment under the lightning pool. A sense of fear grew. However, it was suppressed by Su Zimo's Dao heart instantly. Su Zimo stood up and grit his teeth, continuing forward. Snap! Thunder boomed. A scarlet thunderbolt struck Su Zimo's head, almost knocking him unconscious. His body was already in tatters after the two tribulations of wind and fire. Now that he was struck by two thunderbolts, his life force was draining bit by bit. If he continued, he would truly die. For the first time, Su Zimo looked lost as he gazed at the endless lightning domain before him. Should he continue? How about ending it here? The moment that thought crossed his mind, it enlarged endlessly. In Su Zimo's mind, it was as though this voice sounded from every single corner, telling him to turn back and stop advancing. If he persisted, he would die. Right then, countless inheritances outside the three tribulations domain moved and released legacy phenomenons. The light of the legacy phenomenons shone on the three tribulations domain and enveloped Su Zimo. There were inheritances of the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, everything. At that moment, as long as he gave up and nodded, he could choose one of the inheritances and leave the three tribulations domain. He no longer had to endure the pain and the threat of death. In fact, even the inheritances outside the three tribulations domain were very powerful. They were not necessarily weaker than the inheritance within the three tribulations domain. The legacy of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was outside. The inheritance of the Fiend sect, Pure Maiden sect, was also outside. Throughout history, no one had been able to clear the three tribulations domain. Why should he be stubborn? Perhaps the legend of the three tribulations domain was just a scam. There might be nothing within the three tribulations domain even if he cleared it. Lin Xuanji's master had once said that he would encounter a great calamity. The lightning tribulation before him might be that great calamity. As long as he retreated, he would be able to avoid this calamity. Countless thoughts appeared in Su Zimo's mind. He wavered. For a moment, he almost nodded and chose an inheritance to leave this damn place. However, he did not in the end. Su Zimo stood motionlessly in the lightning domain. As long as he stopped on the spot and did not advance, the lightning tribulation would not descend. Time passed by slowly. Su Zimo lowered his head slightly and the confusion in his eyes disappeared. Although his body was already battered, his eyes shone brighter and brighter with a determined gaze. All of a sudden, Su Zimo moved and took another step forward. Boom! The lightning tribulation descended. Su Zimo was almost sprawled on the ground from the attack, and his life force became even weaker. However, he struggled to stand up and continued forward. Boom! After being struck by the lightning tribulation, he stood up and continued forward. It was a cycle. Su Zimo's initially wavering heart became firmer and firmer. The wind and fire both failed and now, even the lightning tribulation that could destroy all beings could not cause his Dao heart to waver. He wanted to clear the three tribulations domain not only for the inheritance within, but also to establish his own Dao heart. His Dao could only persist forward. There was no way back. Every single lightning tribulation made Su Zimo feel the deep fear of death. However, he did not retreat. Relying on his strong willpower and determination towards his Tao heart, Su Zimo stood up time and again after he was struck down.
Above his head, the lightning pool surged as though it had transformed into pairs of eyes that were looking down at the stumbling figure.
Finally. Suddenly, a dignified voice sounded within the lightning domain. Why do you cultivate? I want to establish a Tao. Raising his head, Su Zimo said word by word with a bright gaze. This Tao will be different from the immortal Buddhist and Fiend Das. What Tao will it be? The dignified voice asked emotionlessly. I call it the martial Tao. Why the martial Tao? The martial Tao pushes one to advance courageously. After saying that, Su Zimo suddenly took a step forward. The martial Tao refers to one's true heart. He took another step forward. The martial Tao allows one to take revenge and repay gratitude as they wish. Another step forward. With every sentence, Su Zimo took a step forward. With every step he took, his aura would increase and his Tao heart would become stronger and unshakable. The martial Tao allows one to be decisive in killing. The martial Tao is about not yielding and resisting. The martial Tao is the boldness of going against 10 million people. The martial Tao is the courage to take on immortals and fiends, the courage to fight against the heavens for one's fate. My Tao title shall be Desolate Martial. I'm willing to create a martial Tao and break the shackles of all living beings so that all living beings in the world can cultivate and become immortals. The desolate word of the Tao title came from the name of Tianhuang Mainland as well as the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The meaning of martial came from the martial Tao itself. Su Zimo's final sentence caused the lightning pool to boil instantly, creating huge waves as though it was greatly shaken. The dignified voice from the beginning sounded once more, shaking the world. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. Middle Continent, 100 Refinement Sect. Extreme Fire and the others were in the main hall, listening to the news from a disciple. The current situation is still unclear. Dean and the other 6 titular disciples have entered the 3 tribulations domain and have already come out. However, there's still no news of Granduncle Master. The 100 Refinement Sect cultivator said. Extreme Fire and the others exchanged glances and could see the worry in each other's eyes. Throughout history, no one had been able to pass through the 3 tribulations domain. They were afraid that Su Zimo had barged into the 3 tribulations domain with nothing but impulse and might end up dying. Right then, a dignified voice echoed in the skies above Tianhuang Mainland, spreading to every single corner of Tianhuang Mainland. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. Those 14 words were shouted thrice. Each repetition was louder than the previous and was deafening. Extreme Fire was emotional as he looked up at the firmaments. His body trembled uncontrollably as he exclaimed in ecstasy, "It's Zimo! Zimo has established his Tao heart." At the same time, a black-robed cultivator broke out of his cave abode with a blood-colored saber in his hands. Standing in midair, he looked into the distance and murmured with a moved expression, "Desolate Martial, Desolate Martial. Zimo, are you going to establish your martial Tao?" Previously, when Ming Zhan obtained the inheritance of Xidagarba, it caused a stir in Tianhuang Mainland as well. However, that sound was extremely faint and it only rang once. Apart from cultivators, no one else noticed it. However, this time round, Desolate Martial's martial Tao shocked the world. The 9 immortal sects, 8 demon races, 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 heretical doctrines, for unorthodox groups as well as countless aristocratic families were shocked. Many experts in seclusion were alarmed and came out one after another. Chapter 1019. Alarming the Half-Martial Ancestor. Chapter 1019. Alarming the Half-Martial Ancestor. Who is it? Who is establishing a Dao? Desolate Marshal wishes to establish a Dao and impart martial to all living beings? How ambitious! This is a stir that can only be triggered after a perfect Dao heart is established alongside the recognition of many ancient mighty figures. There's going to be a massive change in the cultivation world. Instantly, countless experts of the sects appeared and lamented. Glass Palace. A middle-aged man in a rainbow-colored Taoist robe looked in the direction of the middle continent with a dark expression. His eyes filled with endless rage. The void around him trembled. This was the power of the conjoint body realm, shaking the void. The surrounding cultivators, including Dharma-characteristic Dao lords, were silent out of fear of disturbing the sect master of Glass Palace who stood before them. Ever since Dao being Glass passed away in the Dao inheritance ground a day ago, the entire Glass Palace had fallen into this stifling atmosphere. A titular disciple killed by a nascent soul was something that had never happened in history. Titular disciples were the face of the supersects and possessed terrifying combat strength. It was rare for them to die prematurely. They were almost invincible among their peers. Even if titular disciples were to clash against one another, while victory could be determined, it would be way too difficult for them to kill one another. As for cultivators with higher cultivations, they were wary of the supersects behind the titular disciples and would not dare to attack them. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for titular disciples to die. But now, a variant had appeared in the cultivation world, a monster incarnate. As a nascent soul, he killed Dao being Glass in the Dao inheritance ground without giving Glass Palace any face. Dao being Glass was the personal disciple that Glass Palace's sect master valued the most. Su Zimo isn't dead yet. Glass Palace's sect master's voice was cold and chilling. Sect master, according to the news from the Dao inheritance ground, Desolate Marshal should be Su Zimo's Dao title. A Dharma-characteristic Dao lord said in a deep voice. Glass Palace's sect master was truly enraged. Gritting his teeth, he said, if he manages to escape from the Dao inheritance ground alive, gather all the mighty figures of the sect and follow me to the middle continent to kill our way into 100 Refinement sect. I want to see if extreme fire can stop me. Not bad. Another conjoint body mighty figure nodded. That lad is way too much of a monster incarnate. He has already taken on a huge grudge with us and we can't let him continue growing. We have to kill him. No matter the cost. Don't worry, sect master. Even if that lad were to establish his Dao, it would be useless. A Dao lord said, don't forget that there are still titular disciples like Dean in the Dao inheritance ground. This lad won't be able to escape even if he has wings. At the same time, in Poison Sect, an old man with withered yellow cheeks sat beneath a gigantic poisonous python and held a jade green staff in his hands. Sect master, I just received news that Su Zimo is not dead yet. He escaped into the Three Tribulations domain and has already established his Dao heart, causing the world to tremble. A cultivator came before the old man and knelt on the ground, speaking in a deep voice. Poison Sect's sect master's expression turned cold as he said with a sinister gaze, that lad isn't dead yet? Let's see how long more he can live. Chaos Essence Sect. Many conjoint body mighty figures were awakened by the voice in the firmaments and walked out of their cave abodes. Firmament arrival, come here. Suddenly, an authoritative voice sounded from Chaos Essence Sect. Firmament arrival was the Dao title of Chaos Essence Sect's sect master. There were only a few people in the entire sect who dared to order a sect master like that. Before long, a middle-aged Dao being arrived before an ancient cave abode and bowed respectfully. The existence in the cave abode was the Grand Elder of the sect, D. Fan. His cultivation had already broken through the conjoint body realm and he was now at the half-martial Ancestor realm. Breaking through from conjoint body to Mahayana was extremely difficult. Even in the ancient era where the human race rose to glory and there were many conjoint body mighty figures, there were very few Mahayana patriarchs. Above the conjoint body realm and below the Mahayana realm, there was another minor realm, the half-martial Ancestor realm. It was also known as half-step Mahayana. Although one had not fully broken through to the Mahayana realm at this point, they were qualified to be referred as ancestors. This was the origin of the half-martial Ancestor. Even though he was only a half-martial Ancestor, his combat strength was enough to suppress all conjoint body mighty figures. In Tianhuang Mainland, Mahayana realm patriarchs had broad horizons and pursued the great Tao wholeheartedly. They had long broken free from the restraints of the sect and rarely appeared. The only time Mahayana patriarchs might appear is if the sect is in danger of being destroyed. This meant that the half-martial ancestor was almost the strongest existence in Tianhuang mainland. For the sake of advancing further, the half-martial ancestor would enter seclusion all year round as well. If not for the fact that desolate martial established the Tao and shocked the world, Di Fan would not have woken up from his seclusion. Chaos Essence sect master whispered. Elder D, even you were alarmed? Yes. Within the cave abode, a pair of eyes opened slowly and shone with a divine light. It was like a bolt of lightning that tore through the night sky and could not be avoided. What's going on? Di Fan asked slowly. Chaos Essence sect master hurriedly recounted the situation of the Tao inheritance ground in detail. That's him. Di Fan frowned slightly. Di Yin was his grandson. Part of the reason why Di Yin was so famous in the cultivation world was also because he was backed by a half-martial ancestor. 100 years ago, Di Yin suffered a crushing defeat in Myriad Phenomenon City, and his protection dermic weapon was shattered, almost resulting in his death. Di Fan knew about it as well and was extremely furious. However, there was no news of Su Zimo later on and things were left unsettled. Di Fan asked, "Are you sure that he's at the nascent soul realm?" Yes, he just broke through to perfected nascent soul realm at the Thousand Crane Tea Party more than a month ago. Chaos Essence sect master replied. Yes, there's nothing to worry about then. Di Fan replied indifferently. Di Yin is already at the void reversion realm. No matter how much of a monster incarnate he is, there's no way he can be a match for Di Yin. He won't have a chance to break through in the Tao inheritance ground either. Chaos Essence sect master added. Di Fan said in a deep voice, "All right, you may leave. I'm going to continue my seclusion. Don't disturb me unless something major happens." Chaos Essence sect master bowed and retreated. The Tao inheritance ground. Di Yin had just left the Three Tribulations domain, and had yet to take a breather when he heard a deafening voice. Desolate Martial wishes to establish a Tao and impart martial to all living beings. He turned around suddenly and his gaze froze. The cultivators of the Tao inheritance ground looked over with widened eyes in shock. Could it be? Su Zimo actually cleared the Three Tribulations domain. The #1 in history. Who can match such a Tao heart? The crowd roared and the cultivators were shocked. Suddenly, a bedazzling light burst forth from the end of the Three Tribulations domain. A sword came from the west and tore through the void. A spear stood tall and shattered the world. There was an indomitable figure holding a horsetail whisk with an immortal aura. He looked like a peerless immortal king with a domineering demeanor. A great Buddha descended and golden light shone endlessly. Sanskrit echoed endlessly. There were also demonic infants that shrieked in a soul-stirring manner. A series of shocking legacy phenomenons burst forth like volcanoes at the end of the Three Tribulations domain. There were dozens of them. The entire Tao inheritance ground was trembling. This is... Su Zimo's Tao heart was acknowledged by all the ancient mighty figures. This meant that Su Zimo could choose any of the dozens of ancient inheritances within. Chapter 1020, Flesh Rebirth. Chapter 1020, Flesh Rebirth. When they heard the discussions around them, Tao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples had ugly expressions. Up till now, they had suffered a crushing defeat. It was embarrassing enough that everyone joined forces and set up traps to kill Su Zimo, but he managed to escape. Later on, Su Zimo barged into the Three Tribulations domain. They were indignant and wanted to follow Su Zimo to get their share of the treasures. In the end, all of them retreated dejectedly and lost all face. But now, not only did Su Zimo clear the Three Tribulations domain, he even obtained the recognition of many ancient mighty figures. They were defeated again and again. Tao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples could vaguely sense that the situation was out of their control. After a moment of silence, Tao being Malevolent Earth suddenly sneered. So what if you get the acknowledgement of many ancient mighty figures? Don't forget, You can only choose one of the inheritances here. Not bad. Dao being Zephyr Thunder nodded as well. Generally speaking, cultivators who could obtain the inheritance in the Dao inheritance ground would not obtain a second inheritance. The conjoint body mighty figures that could leave their inheritance here were all proud and arrogant experts who had once dominated a region. Naturally, they would hope that their successor would wholeheartedly cultivate to the peak using only the inheritance obtained from them. If everyone could obtain 2, 3 inheritances or more, the inheritances here would have long been snatched away by the former paragons. Everyone, don't worry. Dao being Heavenly Dipper smiled gently. Even if Su Zimo obtains the inheritance, it's useless. This is the Dao inheritance ground and he can't comprehend the heaven and earth outside. The spirit chi is thin and even if he stays inside for 100 years, he won't be able to comprehend or break through. After cultivating to the nascent soul realm, every breakthrough required the essence spirit to comprehend the heaven and earth. This was a separate dimension that was isolated from the outside world. It was impossible for him to break through here. Furthermore, after obtaining the inheritance, it did not mean that cultivators could comprehend it instantly. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The inheritance of an ancient mighty figure was something that required a cultivator to comprehend, cultivate and experience personally before they can understand the obscurities within. However, that was impossible to achieve in this separate dimension of the Dao inheritance ground. Monk Formless and the others nodded. Dao being Heavenly Dipper shrugged with a relaxed expression. Therefore, he has to come out eventually. Otherwise, he won't be able to do anything if he stays inside. Dao being Malevolent Earth sneered, "We'll just guard the vicinity and he'll definitely be the one who can't afford to waste time." Not bad. Dao being Zephyr Thunder said, "No matter what, that person will lose. He's at the nascent soul realm and has 1,000 years of lifespan. We have 5,000 years of lifespan. At most, we'll just wait till he dies." The cultivators nearby were shocked. For the sake of Su Zimo, these titular disciples were willing to spend 1,000 years here. Of course, that was just a casual remark out of anger. Nobody could afford to waste 1,000 years. Dean looked at the Three Tribulations domain and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, a killing intent flashed in his eyes and he disappeared from the spot. If not for Lin Xuanji, he would have killed Su Zimo a long time ago. There wouldn't have been so many variables. Dean intended to make a move and kill all variables within the Dao inheritance ground. He would not allow any accidents to happen when Su Zimo appeared again. In the Three Tribulations domain, Su Zimo finished his last sentence and took another step forward. Suddenly, he felt his vision clearing up. He had already left the boundaries of the lightning domain. The end of the Three Tribulations domain was not big. It was like a small cemetery. There were all sorts of lifelike stone statues within. Some of them were wielding all sorts of gigantic weapons that were filled with killing intent. There were also some stone statues with huge tombstones beside their feet. At that moment, the stone statues emitted a mysterious light that shone on Su Zimo's shattered body. Initially, his body was already in a tragic state after the baptism of the wind and fire tribulations. His flesh was shriveled and his skin was dim like a dried corpse. Many parts of his body were already revealed with white bones. Although Su Zimo's Dao heart had already condensed and was unshakable, his body had truly reached its limits. His life force was weak and his organs were withered. However, at that moment, after his body was covered by the light, his initially shriveled flesh suddenly shone with endless vitality and was gradually nourished. The wounds on his organs healed at a visible speed as well. Flesh and blood regenerated on the bones. His withered body was filled with vitality once more. This was a godly method of regenerating flesh and bones to revive a dead person. After reaching the conjoint body realm, one would be able to regrow their limbs. This glow was clearly a technique left behind by many ancient mighty figures. Initially, a single light from one of the stone statues was enough for Su Zimo to recover completely. But now that dozens of lights shone down, his body recovered completely within a few breaths. An immense amount of life essence circulated within his body, nourishing every single inch of his flesh. His skin shone with a crystalline luster, tender and fair. This was almost equivalent to a rebirth. After experiencing the baptism of the wind and fire tribulations, the bone-piercing wind, tempering of the karmic flames and the regeneration of flesh and blood, his body had become even stronger and more terrifying. Even the injuries on Su Zimo's black-haired essence spirit healed gradually under the shroud of the light. Essence spirit injuries were too difficult to heal, let alone recover completely.
But now, with the help of the light of dozens of ancient mighty figures, his essence spirit had already recovered and its power had increased as well.
Unfortunately, the scar on the scarlet-haired Ian's spirit did not change. As soon as the light touched the scarlet-haired Ian's spirit, they avoided it as though they could sense the aura of the dragon race. Su Zimo could understand. After all, this was a sacred ground of the human race. Naturally, it would not help the scarlet-haired Ian's spirit who was surging with demonic chi. Dozens of legacy phenomenons flashed in the void. Suddenly, a mysterious feeling rose in Su Zimo's heart. If he wanted to, he could inherit more than a single inheritance of the ancient mighty figures. He could inherit all the dozens of inheritances here. The feeling intensified. Could this be the reward for passing the three tribulations domain? Su Zimo muttered softly. He arrived beside a stone statue and touched it gently with his palm. Instantly, countless inheritance information surged into his body. Releasing his palm, he walked to the side of another stone statue and reached out to touch it. The stone statue did not resist either, and endless inheritance information surged into his mind. Su Zimo released his grip with a shocked expression. It was not a hallucination. He could inherit all the inheritances here. Looking at the dozens of ancient mighty figures before him, Su Zimo's eyes lit up after a long period of silence. He understood. The reason why he was able to inherit the inheritances of dozens of ancient mighty figures was not because he had passed the test of the three tribulations domain. It was because of his Tao heart. He wanted to establish the martial Tao and impart martial to all living beings. That was the reason why the remnant consciousnesses of these ancient mighty figures wanted to help him fulfill his grand wish. All of them could sense his Tao heart. Even though they had fallen through the ages and were merely remnant consciousnesses that could vanish at any moment, they were still concerned about the masses. At that moment, the dozens of ancient mighty figures were selfless and unreserved. Su Zimo was touched and bowed deeply. Thank you, seniors, for your love. I, Su Zimo, will not let down your trust and your Tao hearts. Chapter 1021, Tao Heart Fiend Seed. Chapter 1021, Tao Heart Fiend Seed. Su Zimo did a rough count. There were 32 inheritance stone statues here. He did not have much time. Solitary Cloud had consumed a life preservation elixir and could only last for a month at most. He had to leave this place before a month was up. In other words, although there were many inheritances here, he had to find one that was suitable for him and could raise his combat strength in a short period of time. Solitary Cloud was severely injured with only a single breath left. He had to kill his way out and make all the titular disciples outside pay with their lives. He paced around the stone statues and read the words they had left behind. Arriving before a stone statue, Su Zimo paused in his tracks and frowned. The flow of time here was abnormal. Anyone else might not have been able to sense it. However, Su Zimo had cultivated the demonic art, Baron, before. To a certain extent, Baron was a form of control over time. Therefore, he was extremely sensitive to the flow of time. Sweeping his gaze, Su Zimo landed on a green stone beneath his feet. Wiping away the dust on it, he revealed a few lines of words. My Tao title is instant and I was a half step into the Mahayana realm. I was at the initial stages of learning divine powers, but my essence spirit was injured after a huge battle and I fell as a half-martial ancestor. With my divine powers, I altered the time within 5 feet of this place. A year here is equivalent to a day outside. Su Zimo was startled at that statement. In other words, a single day outside was equivalent to a year of cultivation within 5 feet of this place. If he could stay here for 20 days, it would mean that he could cultivate for a full 20 years within the space of these 5 feet. That was way too important for Su Zimo. He had just advanced to the perfected nascent soul realm. No matter how he cultivated or what inheritance he obtained,
It was impossible for him to step into the void reversion realm within 20 days. However, if he could cultivate here for 20 years, he could turn the impossible possible.
Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly as he gradually retreated from the region, continuing to observe the inheritance stone statues here.
Arriving before a stone statue of a mighty figure of the Fiend sects, he paused and looked at the words below.
I am half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky. I once roamed through Tianhuang Mainland and was invincible beneath the Mahayana realm. Another half-martial ancestor expert. A half-martial ancestor expert was only half a step away from reaching the Mahayana realm and becoming a patriarch. Every single one of them had countless dazzling achievements and fame back then. I've left behind a supreme secret manual of the Fiend sects, the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. The stronger a cultivator's Tao heart is, the more powerful this cultivation technique will be. Those with weak Tao hearts are forbidden from cultivating it. At that point, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. This cultivation technique was extremely suitable for his current situation. Firstly, after he entered the nascent soul realm, he had the top-tier cultivation techniques of the immortal and Buddhist sections. However, he did not have any cultivation techniques of the Fiend sections.
If he could add in the Fiend sect's cultivation techniques, his essence spirit would be even more condensed and stronger.
The creation green lotus would also grow faster. Second, and most importantly, according to what half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky said, the stronger the Tao heart, the greater the benefits. Su Zimo believed that nobody's Tao heart could be stronger than his. If he cultivated this cultivation technique, his Tao heart would definitely not be shaken even if some sinister fiend were to invade. Right then, the eyes of the stone statue shone with a strange glint. Su Zimo turned around instinctively. Their gazes met and Su Zimo shuddered. Those eyes were pitch black and cold, emitting a mysterious power that resembled a deep vortex that could suck his soul in. A sinister power surged into his mind through his eyes. Is this what it means to accept an inheritance? This resembles how enlightenment is described in legends. Many thoughts flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Before long, streams of black chi appeared on his black hair and essence spirit. More and more of it gathered in his consciousness. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt that something was amiss. Although he had never received the inheritance of a mighty figure in this place, the situation before him clearly had nothing to do with inheriting a Dharmic Tao. Right from the beginning, he had not obtained any information about the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. Instead, his spirit consciousness was filled with a sinister and vile fiendish aura. Most importantly, his spirit perception was constantly warning him. Su Zimo wanted to retreat and sever his connection with the stone statue. However, he realized that his body was no longer under his control. What a perfect Tao heart! Right then, a sigh sounded in his consciousness with endless vicissitudes. Oh, this body is so perfect as well. The aged voice sounded once more with joy and laughter. The heavens are really helping me, ha ha ha. An inexplicable sense of fear rose in Su Zimo's heart and his body turned cold. He finally realized what he was experiencing. Assimilation. Tao Lord Extreme Fire had once warned him to be careful of being assimilated. After all, his body was way too terrifying and powerful that anyone would be tempted. At that time, Su Zimo did not take it to heart. To think that he would truly encounter such a situation. Furthermore, he was completely unprepared in the Tao inheritance ground. But, how was that possible? The inheritances here had been passed down for countless years and even Mahayana patriarchs would have passed away a long time ago. How could anyone still be alive? Seemingly sensing the confusion in Su Zimo's heart, the voice sounded once more with a faint chuckle. I'm Imperial Sky and I've died a long time ago. However, my Tao technique has yet to dissipate and remains here. Right now, I'm merely borrowing your Tao heart to be reborn and live another life. Su Zimo was shocked. Living another life with the help of his Tao heart. In the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra, the seed of the fiend planted was not referring to something else, but the expert of the fiend sects who had fallen, half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky. There's no need for you to doubt it. The Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra does indeed exist. Within Su Zimo's consciousness, black chi surged endlessly and a human figure was gradually formed. However, its appearance was still unclear. Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky continued. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance to cultivate anymore. However, don't worry. I'll help you complete your cultivation path after devouring your essence spirit. In that short period of time, the essence spirit of the half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky had already fully condensed. His features were clear and his eyes were pitch black, emitting a strange glow as he smiled at Su Zimo. That smile was like a demon that had just walked out of hell, and it was chilling. The essence spirit of the half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky strode towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo suppressed the fear in his heart and calmed down quickly. Your rebirth through the use of the Dao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra is shocking indeed. However, it's not without flaws. Su Zimo said coldly, Dao Heart Fiend Seed. My cultivation is only at the nascent soul realm. Since you implanted a fiend seed using my Dao Heart to regrow your essence spirit, the cultivation realm of your essence spirit is definitely also at the nascent soul realm. Chapter 1022. Devour. Chapter 1022. Devour. You're smart. Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky did not hide his admiration for Su Zimo at all. It's already not bad that you can calm down so quickly in front of me and discover the secret of the Dao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. If not for the fact that I have to rely on you to be reborn, I would have accepted a disciple already. Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky did not stop in his tracks and sighed gently. Unfortunately, this is the cultivation world. If you want to cultivate a great Dao, you have to be cold and heartless. After devouring your essence spirit, I'll be able to enter the void reversion realm quickly. Oh, although the cultivation realm is still lower than in my previous life, it doesn't matter. After all, this body and Dao heart are both perfect. I'll definitely make up for all the regrets of my previous life. Even with his temperament, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky could not contain his excitement after being reborn and could not stop talking. Are you that confident? Su Zimo sneered. We're both at the nascent soul realm. Although you wish to devour me, I can devour you as well. While it seemed like the situation was extremely treacherous for Su Zimo, it could be an opportunity for him as well. As long as he could devour the essence spirit that was reborn from Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky, he had a chance of entering the void reversion realm. Phew! Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky chuckled. That's not a bad idea, but it's a pity that it's unrealistic. Although my reborn essence spirit is at the nascent soul realm, it's not something that your essence spirit can match. We'll know once we try. The black-haired essence spirit did not show the slightest bit of fear when facing Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky. With a loud roar, it lunged forward. The two essence spirits collided. Boom! His sea of consciousness shook. The two figures separated. After a slight pause, they charged forward once more. Their essence spirits clashed continuously. Both of their essence spirits were at the same realm, and whoever could devour the other would have to see whose essence spirit was more condensed and who could win in this essence spirit competition. After a series of clashes, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky's heart skipped a beat. The black-haired essence spirit was much harder to deal with than he had imagined. He had once cultivated to the Half-Martial Ancestor realm and stood at the peak of the entire Tianhuang mainland. Now that he was reborn through this Dao heart and experienced reincarnation, his essence spirit was even more condensed. However, he had not expected that his essence spirit would not be able to gain any advantage against Su Zimo's black-haired essence spirit. The sea of consciousness had already been turned upside down by the two essence spirits. None of them could retreat or surrender. After enduring through the ages and being reborn, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky would definitely cherish this opportunity and would not give it up. But who was Su Zimo? How could he allow himself to be assimilated? Kid, give up resisting. The voice of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky suddenly turned extremely charming, as though it could disturb the minds of cultivators. He said faintly, even if you're assimilated by me, you won't die. I'll inherit your memories, thoughts and everything about you. Actually, for you, it's also a rebirth of sorts. Give up, give up. Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky's voice echoed in Su Zimo's ears. What grand wish do you want to fulfill? I can fulfill it for you. The path of cultivation is filled with hardship and danger. Since I'm here to take your place, why not? Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky was still using his bewitching voice to destroy Su Zimo's will. However, he had been dead for too long and had just been reborn. He could not think straight. Su Zimo was able to gain the recognition of dozens of ancient mighty figures after passing through the Three Tribulations domain. Who could destroy his will? Nobody could shake his Dao heart. I'm sorry. Su Zimo's voice was calm and cold. I'll walk my own path. Kill. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat.
The creation green lotus that was initially hovering not far away spewed out rays of green light that slashed towards the essence spirit of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky.
Is this your trump card? Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky smiled and pointed to the skies. Freeze!
The moment he said that, the 45 green lotus seeds that tore through the air froze in the sea of consciousness.
Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky smiled. My essence spirit was reborn from your essence spirit using your Dao heart. How can that dermic weapon injure me? What about me? The smile of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky suddenly vanished.
The black-haired essence spirit that was not far away had a calm expression, and merely looked at Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky coldly without saying anything. Furthermore, that voice came from behind him.
Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky suddenly felt a chilling sensation. He felt a sharp pain in his chest as an arm filled with dragon scales tore through his chest and exited. Ah! Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky shrieked. Behind him stood a scarlet-haired essence spirit with a cold expression and dragon scales all over its body. It was identical to Su Zimo. It was the scarlet-haired Yin spirit. The scarlet-haired Yin spirit was injured and was initially hiding in the bronze square tripod in the corner. Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky had not noticed it at all. However, at that moment, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit suddenly attacked and launched a fatal attack on Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky. Even though he was an expert of the ancient era and was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never expected that Su Zimo would have two essence spirits in his consciousness. He had absolutely no chance of winning this battle. In reality, if it was any other cultivator, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky would have been able to reincarnate through assimilation with ease. Anyone would be scared out of their wits when they saw such a shocking and terrifying assimilation technique. They would probably faint from fear if they had to face a Half-Martial Ancestor expert of the ancient era, let alone resist. Unfortunately, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky was way too unlucky. Throughout the long years, no one had been able to pass through the Three Tribulations domain. Finally, someone managed to get through, but it was a monster incarnate like Su Zimo who had cultivated two essence spirits. The black-haired essence spirit had already pounced over. The essence spirit of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky was severely injured and could not defend against it at all. He could only glare with widened eyes and roar, "I'm indignant." Swoosh! Swoosh! The black-haired essence spirit reached out with both hands and grabbed the head of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky, devouring the power of his essence spirit endlessly. This sort of assimilation not only devoured the power of the essence spirit, but also the memories of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky. The memories of a Half-Martial Ancestor were way too precious. Not only did it contain the true Dao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra, it also contained many insights and understanding into Fiend cultivation techniques. This meant that Su Zimo might be able to break through to the Void Reversion realm without the need to comprehend the heaven and earth. That was because the entire process of comprehending the heaven and earth that Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky had experienced after breaking through to the Void Reversion realm was in his memories. With the help of the essence spirit of Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky, Su Zimo might be able to break through to the Void Reversion realm, even the Dao Inheritance ground with thin spirit chi. He was able to turn the situation around. Before long, Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky's essence spirit dimmed and was devoured by Su Zimo. The black-haired essence spirit had another aura of the Fiend sex that was on par with the Immortal and Buddhist sections. At that moment, Su Zimo felt his body lighten. Now that Half-Martial Ancestor Imperial Sky was dead, Su Zimo had regained control of his body. With a flash, he arrived at the region in front of Half-Martial Ancestor Instant and sat down cross-D to cultivate. A single day outside was worth a year of cultivation here. Su Zimo wanted to break through as soon as possible and rush out of the Three Tribulations domain. He wanted to kill all the titular disciples who surrounded him and cause rivers of blood to flow. Chapter 1023 Void Reversion Realm. Chapter 1023 Void Reversion Realm. Time slowly passed. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. 10 days had passed and there were not many changes to the cultivators in the Dao inheritance ground. Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder, Monk Formless and Dao being Malevolent Earth were still guarding outside the Three Tribulations domain. They were either meditating or deep in thought, and there was no hint of impatience on their faces. Although Dao being Hidden Death did not appear, everyone knew that he was definitely nearby. Apart from the 4 titular disciples, a large number of cultivators from various major sects and factions had gathered in the vicinity. Everyone wanted to wait for an outcome. In the blink of an eye, 15 days passed. The number of cultivators outside the Three Tribulations domain did not decrease. At the end of the Three Tribulations domain, Su Zimo, who was sitting in front of the stone statue of half-martial Ancestor Instant, had already cultivated for 15 years. This day, he finally digested the essence spirit of half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky that he devoured completely. The power of his essence spirit had already reached its peak. For the past 15 years, the enlightenment half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky gained when he broke through to Void Reversion Realm flowed through Su Zimo's mind repeatedly. He gradually sensed the opportunity to break through. The black-haired essence spirit was finally about to step into the Void Reversion Realm after experiencing the baptism of the top cultivation techniques of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects. Within his consciousness, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Sanskrit echoed endlessly through the world. A gigantic Buddha body appeared behind the black-haired essence spirit. Black fiend chi spewed out endlessly from the black-haired essence spirit's body. It was cold and terrifying as it coiled in midair, forming a sickle-like divine weapon. The 3 top-tier cultivation techniques of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, the Purple Thunder Manual, Great Day Rulai Sutra and Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra, were constantly tempered. The black-haired essence spirit became purer and its impurities disappeared without a trace. His sea of consciousness was boiling. Su Zimo's eyes opened and shone with divine light as he reared his head and howled. Boom! His spirit consciousness vibrated. The black-haired essence spirit's black hair danced and its aura rose continuously, emitting endless light as his spirit consciousness expanded. It had broken through. The spirit was refined and reverted to the Void Reversion Realm. Su Zimo could clearly sense the power of a Void Reversion essence spirit. With a single thought of his spirit consciousness, he could mobilize even more dermic powers. Normally speaking, the range of an early-stage Void Reversion spirit consciousness could reach 50 kilometers. Even at its peak, it could not exceed 500 kilometers. However, the range of Su Zimo's spirit consciousness had already reached 500 kilometers. The top-notch cultivation techniques of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects allowed his essence spirit to undergo another transformation. The Void Reversion Realm was way too important to Su Zimo. Initially, when titular disciples released their essence spirit secret skills, he could only use the Mingwang prayer beads, seeds of the creation green lotus and other treasures to defend passively. However, after he entered the Void Reversion Realm, he would be able to release the essence spirit secret skill that he had cultivated in the past. Although he was only at the early stage Void Reversion Realm, his black-haired essence spirit possessed 3 top-notch cultivation techniques of the Immortals, Buddhas and Fiends. The power of his essence spirit was no weaker than any of the titular disciples. Once he entered the Void Reversion Realm, the power of all his dermic arts would increase exponentially. Although it had only been 15 days, Su Zimo had changed way too much. As his cultivation realm stabilized, his consciousness gradually returned to normal. Su Zimo's gaze flickered and he pondered for a moment. He was in no hurry to leave this place. He still had some time. Now that he had broken through to the Void Reversion Realm, he should have no issues dealing with Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other titular disciples with the increase in his combat strength. However, he still had no confidence against Di-In. Su Zimo intended to continue cultivating the many fiend techniques of the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. The more dermic arts he comprehended, the more confidence he would have against Dein. The fiend techniques of the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra were all-encompassing. There were cultivation techniques from all 7 of the current fiend sects within. There was an extremely strange essence spirit secret skill in the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. The secret skill was known as the soul-searching art. It was not a purely offensive dermic art but a technique that could capture a cultivator's essence spirit alive and collect its memories. Of course, it was not certain how much of its memories could be collected. Furthermore, even if essence spirits that were targeted by the soul-searching art were not dead, they would be rendered as idiots without any consciousness. There was also a visual technique known as the Heavenly Fiend Eye, and was similar to the bewitching eye of the Pure Maiden sect. If a cultivator was controlled by that visual technique, he would not disobey even if he was asked to commit suicide. Of course, the offensive power of this eye technique was not strong and was much weaker than his Illumination Dragon Eye. Su Zimo did not get up and continued sitting. His essence spirit was still nurturing the creation Green Lotus and cultivating the various fiend techniques of the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. With the memories of half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky, Su Zimo was able to cultivate those fiend techniques with half the effort. In the blink of an eye. Another 5 days passed outside while Su Zimo cultivated for another 5 years. In the past 5 years, he had already cultivated more than half of the fiend techniques in the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra, and even managed to cultivate the strongest dermic art within it. Su Zimo stood up and was prepared to leave. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and exclaimed softly. Something changed in his consciousness once more. To be precise, the creation Green Lotus had changed. Initially, the creation Green Lotus was at grade 5. It was a Green Lotus platform shrouded by chaos and a resplendent glow with 5 layers of gigantic flower petals. But now the creation Green Lotus underwent another change. In the middle of the Green Lotus platform, a circle of tender petals grew once more. They were emerald green and slowly bloomed. Grade 6. This was the sign of the creation Green Lotus advancing to grade 6. However, this change did not stop. Beneath the creation Green Lotus, a green and slender lotus stem grew. It was straight like jade and crystalline. The thin threads within were clear like the veins of a human. A gigantic lotus leaf grew from the stem. Su Zimo was elated. He could vaguely sense that this was the final form of the creation Green Lotus. Although the creation Green Lotus was in his consciousness, it was as though the Green Lotus was connected to the world. Its stem was rooted in his sea of consciousness and the lotus flower towered into the firmaments with its leaves covering the skies. The Green Lotus swayed and chaos dissipated as the entire spirit consciousness trembled. A grade 6 creation Green Lotus was comparable to a Khanate Tao Lord dermic weapon. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly as he strode out of the cemetery and headed outside the 3 Tribulations domain. He could only return to the other inheritances here if he had the chance. Solitary Cloud did not have much time left. He could not possibly exhaust Solitary Cloud to death just to obtain the inheritances here. The lightning pool above did not react to him at all when he stepped into the 3 Tribulations domain again. The Karmic flame did not reappear when he crossed the desert. After passing the 3 Tribulations domain, he had already obtained its recognition and could travel through it at will. Outside the 3 Tribulations domain. After 20 days, Tao being Heavenly Dipper and the other 4 titular disciples had yet to leave. They were not the only ones. Even the surrounding cultivators were waiting with bated breaths. Gradually, a figure appeared in the frost region and walked over. Look, someone's coming out. A cultivator pointed at the 3 Tribulations domain and shouted. Countless cultivators looked over. Tao being Zephyr Thunder's eyes lit up and lightning flashed. He stood up slowly and sneered. Fufu as expected. Su Zimo, you can't help but come out yourself. Chapter 1024. Afraid you won't be able to take it. Chapter 1024. Afraid you won't be able to take it. The figure in the frost region was gradually becoming clearer. It was undoubtedly Su Zimo. Tao being Malevolent Earth sneered and stood up. Monk Formless woke up from his meditation as well and touched his storage bag.
The wooden fish and mallet were already in his hands.
Dao being Heavenly Dipper smiled and sent a voice transmission secretly. Everyone, we can't hold back this time round. Kill him with all our might so that nothing unexpected happens. That's right. Monk Formless nodded.
The unforeseen circumstance that they were worried about was none other than Dean returning and taking away the treasures that belonged to them.
Before long, Su Zimo stepped out of the Three Tribulations domain. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other three had already surrounded him with killing intent. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he nodded. Good, very good. All of you are here so that I don't have to look for you one by one. Right then, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other three titular disciples gradually noticed something amiss. At first glance, Su Zimo was no different from before. However, the aura he exuded was much fiercer than before. His presence was strong. His might was unrestrained while his gaze was frightening and sharp like a knife that could not be avoided. Void Reversion Realm. When Dao being Malevolent Earth Spirit Consciousness swept past Su Zimo, his heart skipped a beat. When Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Monk Formless swept their spirit consciousness past Su Zimo, their hearts skipped a beat too as disbelief filled their eyes. How was that possible? Su Zimo had just broken through to the perfected nascent soul realm at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. How could he break through to the Void Reversion realm in just 20 days? Furthermore, this was the Dao inheritance ground that was in its own separate dimension. The spirit chi was thin and he could not even comprehend the heaven and earth. How could he break through? Even if Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other three titular disciples racked their brains, they would not be able to imagine what Su Zimo had experienced and obtained at the end of the Three Tribulations domain. The Void Reversion Realm. He broke through? Heavens, what sort of opportunities did Su Zimo obtain inside? A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Instantly, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other three titular disciples felt immense pressure. The difference between the nascent soul and void reversion realm was a major cultivation realm and his combat strength would definitely increase as well. Prior to this, Su Zimo did not have much of a chance to retaliate against their combined attacks. But now that he was at void reversion realm, he definitely had the power to threaten them. At that moment, all of them reckoned that even if Su Zimo was at the void reversion realm, he was only at the early stage of the void reversion realm. There was no way he could win against four of them. However, this battle would not be as easy as it was initially. If Su Zimo were to risk his life, there was a high chance that he would drag one of them down with him. The four of them did not realize that Su Zimo was not just going to kill one or two people. He was going to bury them all in the Dao inheritance ground. Su Zimo, your heaven splitter is in my hand. Dao being Heavenly Dipper looked relaxed and smiled. The mystic magnet mountain is in Dao being Malevolent Earth hands. What other treasures do you have? You're left with nothing but the Creation Green Lotus. Patron Su, if you return the Creation Green Lotus to the Buddhist sects, I can withdraw from this battle. Monk Formless said indifferently, we Buddhist disciples have always been aloof from worldly affairs and don't wish to fight with others. However, I can't bear to see this treasure fall into the hands of fiend demons like you. His words sounded righteous but were extremely hypocritical. This was almost a form of extermination and yet, it was called standing aloof from worldly affairs. Even the surrounding cultivators looked disgusted. If Su Zimo were to hand over the Creation Green Lotus, Monk Formless might withdraw from the fight. However, without the Creation Green Lotus, Su Zimo's combat strength would be greatly reduced and he would definitely be killed by Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other two. In that case, not only would Monk Formless obtain the Creation Green Lotus, he would also gain a good reputation. The thoughts of Monk Formless could not be hidden from the many cultivators present. Fufufu, you want the Creation Green Lotus? Su Zimo could not help but laugh. He looked down at Monk Formless and retracted his smile, saying coldly, all right, I'll give it to you. The moment he said that, purple lightning flashed on his body, and a pair of gigantic wings of dermic power grew from his back. He transformed into a bolt of lightning and arrived before Monk Formless instantly. Against the four titular disciples, Su Zimo was fearless and attacked first. The moment Su Zimo moved, the 4 titular disciples reacted instantly. Another saber appeared in Dao being Heavenly Dipper's hands. It was Su Zimo's Heaven Splitter. Heaven Splitter was not Su Zimo's destiny dermic weapon, and could be used by Dao being Heavenly Dipper the moment the latter got his hands on it. He now had 2 sabers in his hands. Stars encirclement of the moon. Wielding 2 connate dermic sabers in his hands, Dao being Heavenly Dipper slashed down towards Su Zimo's back. Above the firmaments, a gigantic starry sky appeared. Countless stars shone resplendently as though endless starlight was raining down before them. Stars appeared. The saber beam was piercingly cold. Under the illumination of endless starlight, it transformed into 2 bright moons that tore through the void and descended. It was an extremely shocking sight. It was as though 2 full moons were falling from the firmaments and slashing towards Su Zimo. This was the wrath of the firmaments and was unstoppable. Ooh! Dao being Zephyr Thunder gripped his hammer with both hands and spun his body, causing a series of hurricanes to swirl around the hammer. The hurricanes revolved around him, forming a tornado that connected the heavens and the earth. It swept towards Su Zimo with a terrifying might. Everywhere it passed, sand and rocks filled the skies and mud churned, as though it could destroy all life. Dao being Malevolent Earth swung his bone spear and endless malevolent chi surged forth, forming a black fog that surged violently and transformed into a menacing head in midair. The malevolent black head opened its mouth and bit down viciously at Su Zimo. The 3 titular disciples attacked at the same time. There was also a possibility that Dao being Hidden Death was nearby. Although he did not appear, he could deal a fatal blow at any moment. The scene before him was extremely similar to how the 4 of them surrounded and tried to kill Su Zimo 20 days ago. Furthermore, the attacks of Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other 2 titular disciples were even more terrifying. It was clear that they had already used their full strength. It was suffocating. Even the spectating cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat and suffocate. Was this the power of the titular disciples? Even Dharma characteristic Dao lords would not be able to last more than a single breath against such a combined attack. Monk Formless' expression was calm and he did not panic at all as he slammed the mallet in his hands. Dong! The sound of the wooden fish rang. The surrounding cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. Many cultivators clutched their chests and staggered into the distance with pained expressions. Even onlookers would have to risk their lives in such a huge battle. If that was the case for the cultivators watching from afar, it was hard for them to imagine what sort of impact Su Zimo would receive in the middle of the fray. The most frightening thing was that the attacks of the 3 titular disciples were already crushing down. Unless Su Zimo could release combat strength and methods to match the 4 of them single-handedly, he would definitely be severely injured. Kill! Su Zimo roared and thunderclap kill exploded, negating the impact of the wooden fish sound. Bald monk, this is the creation green lotus. I'm afraid you won't be able to take it. Su Zimo hollered and his glabella shone. A green shadow appeared and an emerald jade-like crystalline lotus appeared. It wasn't just a lotus platform, there were lotus leaves and a stem as well. This was a completely formed creation green lotus. Chapter 1025, Heavenly Fiend Scythe. Chapter 1025, Heavenly Fiend Scythe. While others did not feel anything when they saw the creation green lotus in its complete form, Monk Formless was shocked. For the creation green lotus to grow to such a state meant that it had already reached maturity. It was said in the ancient books of the Buddhist monasteries that when the creation green lotus stole creation from heaven and earth to reach grade 6 and arrive at maturity, apart from a massive increase in power, there would also be many other obscurities gained. Throughout history, only the ancient Buddha emperor managed to nurture a grade 8 creation green lotus by relying on great wisdom, opportunities, and immense perseverance. It was comparable to an emperor weapon. After that, no one even produced a grade 7 creation green lotus. During this period of time, there were indeed people who managed to produce grade 6 creation green lotuses. However, the creation green lotus required the nurturing of one's essence spirit. Because of that, the cultivation of these cultivators progressed slowly and their lifespans were eventually exhausted, causing them to stop at the Dharma characteristic realm. Yet,
The cultivator before him was only more than 100 years old and had managed to nurture a grade 6 creation green lotus.
This is way too scary. This thought flashed through Monk Formless' mind. It was not unheard of for paragons to reach the void reversion realm at more than 100 years old. However, the fact that someone managed to nurture a grade 6 creation green lotus while advancing to the void reversion realm in less than 200 years was way too terrifying. It was unimaginable. The void reversion realm had a lifespan of 5,000 years. A void reversion that was more than 100 years old was way too young.
The young man before him had more than enough time to nurture the creation green lotus and let it advance by another grade or two.
At that time, a grade 7 or even grade 8 creation green lotus would reappear. The entire Tianhuang mainland would be shaken.
At the thought of that, Monk Formless shuddered.
He could not allow that person to rise. He had to kill that person here and take away the creation green lotus. In the blink of an eye, thousands of thoughts flashed through Monk Formless' mind. However, he did not stop what he was doing. Blood chi surged as he held the wooden fish in his left hand and the wooden mallet in his right, smashing it towards Su Zimo. At that moment, Dao being Heavenly Dipper's double sabers descended first. 2 cold full moons that were shrouded by the stars descended behind Su Zimo's head with a sharp killing intent.
Without even turning his head, Su Zimo closed his fingers and conjured a sword art that slashed behind him gently.
Chi! A blinding sword beam burst forth with torrential killing intent. If the killing intent released by the 2 full moons could be considered as rivers, the killing intent released by the sword chi was like an endless sea. When the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. The stars in the sky were thrown into chaos by the killing intent. They collided and turned into streams of light that fell one after another.
Without the support of the starlight, the 2 full moons were sliced into 2 by the sword chi and dispersed instantly.
The white sword chi did not dissipate and slashed towards Dao being Heavenly Dipper. That sword chi again. Dao being Heavenly Dipper was alarmed. In the previous exchange, his dermic arts were shattered by this sword chi. Now that Su Zimo was at the void reversion realm, the power of the sword chi was clearly stronger.
Dao being Heavenly Dipper did not dare to be careless and hurriedly slashed out multiple saber intents, wanting to destroy the sword chi.
Because of that, his attacks towards Su Zimo slowed down slightly and could not pose any real threat.
After executing the heaven-slaying sword art, Su Zimo conjured hand seals once more and a pitch-black fiend chi that was chilling to the bones appeared in the air. The demonic chi looked even purer and more condensed than Dao being Malevolent Earth's fiend chi. No matter what, Dao being Malevolent Earth was just a titular disciple. There was no way his fiend technique could compare to half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky. Although Su Zimo had cultivated the immortal and Buddhist dermic arts for more than 100 years, right now, his dermic powers of the fiend Dao were the strongest. What he devoured was not only the essence spirit of half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky. He also inherited the latter's comprehension and understanding of the fiend Dao. The rumbling fiend chi gathered in midair and turned into a gigantic scythe that was pitch black and cold. When the malevolent head that was floating over saw the pitch-black scythe, its expression changed starkly.
The other cultivators present could not recognize it. However, as a titular disciple of Malevolent Earth sect, he quickly recalled some of the legends of the sect. Heavenly Fiend Scythe. Dao being Malevolent Earth sounded from the malevolent head with a hint of fear. The Heavenly Fiend Scythe was a top-grade dermic art of the ancient fiend Dao.
It was extremely ferocious and specialized in reaping the lives of cultivators.
Not many people of the same cultivation realm could defend against the scythe. That dermic art had long been lost and he did not expect it to reappear. The strongest dermic art recorded in the Dao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra was none other than the Heavenly Fiend Scythe. Swoosh!
The gigantic Heavenly Fiend Scythe was raised and streaked through the air like a black shadow, slashing down fiercely at the incoming malevolent head. Everywhere the gigantic scythe passed, life seemed to be drained clean. The malevolent head collided with the Heavenly Fiend Scythe without causing any loud sounds. Sizzle! Under countless gazes, the Heavenly Fiend Scythe split the gigantic head in midair and slashed down slowly. The malevolent head swayed and its fiend chi could dissipate at any moment. Shoo! The head opened its mouth and a sinister bone spear pierced out, landing heavily on the edge of the scythe. Boom!
there was a deafening sound.
The malevolent head and the heavenly fiend Scythe dispersed completely. Within the pitch-black fiend Chi, a figure fell from midair in a wretched manner. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. It was a frightening sight.
He was injured. A single exchange had already injured Tao being malevolent earth. The crowd fell into an uproar. To think that Su Zimo would be this terrifying now that he was at the void reversion realm. He managed to injure one of the titular disciples, Tao being malevolent earth, with a single dermic art. Furthermore, that was under the premise of him going against 4 people single-handedly. In reality, the heavenly fiend Scythe was equivalent to a move that came from a lifetime of enlightenment from the half-martial Ancestor Imperial Sky, but released by Su Zimo's hands. How could Tao being malevolent earth defend against it?
If not for his swift reaction and timely use of his destiny dermic weapon to defend, he would have been severely injured by now.
Ni. At the same time, Su Zimo chanted Sanskrit and released the damning mantra, forming the immortal trap seal. After entering the void reversion realm, the power of that dermic art increased exponentially as well. In midair, a gigantic golden palm descended and crushed down towards Tao being Zephyr Thunder, who was surrounded by layers of hurricanes. Compared to the heavenly fiend Scythe, the power of the immortal trap seal was much weaker. Although it could not injure Tao being Zephyr Thunder, it managed to block off his attack. The moment Su Zimo attacked, he released all sorts of dermic arts and blocked all 3 of the titular disciples without holding back. The attacks of the 3 titular disciples paused momentarily. To others, this momentary pause might not amount to anything. However, it was more than enough for Su Zimo. In a fight between experts, a single instant made all the difference. In that instant, Su Zimo was in a one-on-one situation against Monk Formless. Monk Formless only realized that when he attacked. However, it was too late. Chapter 1026. Might of the Green Lotus established. Chapter 1026. Might of the Green Lotus established. Monk Formless wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. Su Zimo gripped the slender green lotus stem of the creation green lotus and welcomed the incoming wooden fish and mallet. Boom! The 3 dermic weapons collided with a loud bang. The creation green lotus vibrated gently and released a terrifying power that repelled the 2 dermic weapons of Monk Formless instantly. Ah! Monk Formless cried out in pain as his palm was torn and blood gushed out. He could not hold on to the 2 dermic weapons and they flew out of his hands. Before Su Zimo advanced to the void reversion realm, Monk Formless was already not a match for him in melee combat. Su Zimo's body underwent the wind and fire tribulations in the 3 tribulations domain. Coupled with the rebirth of his flesh by the afterglow of the dermic powers released by the ancient mighty figures, his physique was even more terrifying now. Furthermore, he had already advanced to the void reversion realm and wielded the grade 6 creation green lotus. Monk Formless could not defend at all. If not for the fact that the 2 dermic weapons in Monk Formless' hands were the treasures of Formless Monastery and were equivalent to the Mingwang prayer beads, those 2 dermic weapons would have been destroyed by the creation green lotus. Now that Su Zimo had the upper hand, he was relentless. Bald monk, hand over your life. His gaze was like a torch as he hollered and strode forward. The creation green lotus in his hand swayed gently and the lotus platform descended, smashing towards Monk Formless' head. Monk Formless' gaze was ferocious and his benevolent expression earlier on had long disappeared. As a titular disciple, even if he was at a disadvantage for the time being, he had no fear in the face of such danger. He swiped his storage bag and summoned an ancient mirror above his head. Buzz! The ancient mirror shone brightly and expanded rapidly, shimmering with 6 dermic patterns and shielded Monk Formless beneath it. That ancient mirror was also a connate Tao being dermic weapon. The surrounding cultivators were filled with envy. Although they had entered the Tao inheritance ground, most cultivators did not have connate dermic weapons. It was already not bad if they could possess a perfect grade dermic weapon. But now, Monk Formless had already revealed 3 connate dermic weapons. The might of titular disciples was not only in their combat strength but also their foundation, trump cards and treasures. Therefore, under normal circumstances, It was difficult for titular disciples to be killed by anyone of the same cultivation realm. But now, a monster incarnate of the cultivation world had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed this situation. This person was decisive in killing and was fearless. After entering the Dao inheritance ground, he had already killed 2 titular disciples. On the battlefield, when Su Zimo saw Monk Formless take out the connate dermic weapon, the ancient mirror, a cold glint flashed through his eyes as he hollered with a thunderous voice, "Shatter!" The green lotus descended and smashed against the ancient mirror. Boom! There was a deafening bang. Against the tremendous impact, Monk Formless' body bent down and his legs sank deep into the mud, covering his knees. He spat out a mouthful of blood with a pale expression. This single head-on exchange caused his bones to feel like they were about to fall apart. Creaking sounds echoed from his body as his organs vibrated violently. Right then, he heard a strange sound. Crack, crack, crack. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd and countless people gasped. Monk Formless raised his head suddenly and looked up. Cracks appeared on the ancient mirror in his hands and spread continuously, lining the entire mirror in the blink of an eye. Shattered. The connate Dao being dermic weapon could not withstand a single attack from the creation Green Lotus and was shattered. A grade 6 creation Green Lotus could fight against a connate Dao Lord dermic weapon. There were no scratches on the creation Green Lotus after destroying a connate Dao being dermic weapon. It was still as green and shiny as ever. Looking at the shattered ancient mirror, Monk Formless could no longer maintain his composure and his expression changed. Swoosh! The creation Green Lotus swayed and smashed down once more. The spirit chi of the Green Lotus was overwhelming and every single lotus leaf was crystal clear like the most beautiful treasure in the world. However, when the lotus platform smashed down, it carried a destructive aura. The depths of Monk Formless' eyes were filled with fear. If his connate dermic weapon was destroyed by the lotus platform, his body would be smashed into a bloody pulp under the suppression of the lotus platform. At that moment, his legs were deeply sunken into the mud. It was already too late for him to uproot himself and escape. Since even connate Dao being dermic weapons could not defend against the might of the creation Green Lotus, his other methods were useless as well. The only thing he could do was activate his Essence Spirit secret skill. Formless Finger. Monk Formless roared and his glabella shone. An extremely terrifying spirit consciousness burst forth and condensed a finger in midair, pointing towards Su Zimo's head. At the same time, Dao being Heavenly Dipper had just resolved the heaven-slaying sword art. Dao being Malevolent Earth suffered quite a shock after the collision with the Heavenly Fiend Scythe and had just landed. Dao being Zephyr Thunder had also just destroyed the golden palm of the immortal trap seal. When the 3 titular disciples saw that, they did not hesitate and made the most appropriate reaction right away. It would be too late for the 3 of them to make a move or conjure dermic arts to save Monk Formless. The only thing they could use that would arrive instantly was their Essence Spirit secret skill. Furthermore, in the battle against Su Zimo 20 days ago, he was severely injured and almost died after 3 titular disciples released their Essence Spirit secret skills against him. Right now, there were 4 of them. Including Dao being Hidden Death, there were 5 of them. There was no need for Dao being Heavenly Dipper to remind him. Dao being Hidden Death would definitely choose the best timing to strike and deal a fatal blow. Previously, Su Zimo had the help of Demonis G and Dao being Dapamkara to hold off 2 titular disciples. However, this time round, Su Zimo was alone. Desolate Marshal, die! Dao being Malevolent Earth roared and his spirit consciousness burst forth from his glabella, forming a sinister bone spear in midair that stabbed towards Su Zimo. Soul Shaker Art. Dao being Zephyr Thunder hollered. A thick and majestic spirit consciousness converged in midair and formed a spirit consciousness hammer. Lightning flashed as it smashed towards Su Zimo's head. After releasing that Essence Spirit secret skill, Dao being Zephyr Thunder thought to himself, if I can obtain the Purple Thunder Manual and fuse it with his Green Thunder Manual, I'll be able to cultivate an even more terrifying Essence Spirit secret skill. That would be the secret skill of the Thunder Emperor back then. At that thought, Dao being Zephyr Thunder's eyes burned. Bang! Boom! Boom! A star condensed from spirit consciousness burst forth from Dao being Heavenly Dipper's glabella in a bedazzling manner, exuding a tremendous might that arrived instantly. The 4 titular disciples attacked at the same time and released their essence spirit secret skills. The impact of such a terrifying spirit consciousness attack was earth-shaking and could even kill Dharma-characteristic Tao Lords instantly. The entire void was distorted by the interweaving of the 4 spirit consciousnesses. The 4 of them believed that even if Su Zimo possessed the essence spirit dermic weapon from before, he would not be able to defend against their essence spirit secret skills. Right then, a strange fluctuation appeared in the void. A blurry figure appeared. Tao being hidden death. He was not in a hurry to attack. He was waiting for Su Zimo's essence spirit dermic weapon to fail before he activated his essence spirit secret skill to deal a fatal blow. Chapter 1027. Killing Formless. Chapter 1027. Killing Formless. Suddenly, the tides changed on the battlefield. Initially, many of the surrounding cultivators were still guessing if Su Zimo could escape alive. But now, when the 4 titular disciples used their essence spirit secret skills, there was a looming sensation of death that was suffocating. There was no trick to a fight between essence spirits. Many cultivators believed that Su Zimo, who had just entered the void reversion realm, might be able to defend against the essence spirit secret skill of a titular disciple. However, there was no way he could defend against 4 titular disciples. On the battlefield, Su Zimo could sense the spirit consciousness fluctuation coming from behind him.
His expression was calm and there was not a single ripple in his eyes.
All of a sudden,
the green lotus platform that was initially smashing down swayed and a green glow burst forth from it with a boundless sharpness.
The green lotus seeds. After the creation green lotus reached grade 6, the number of green lotus seeds had reached 54. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Su Zimo willed. The 54 green lotus seeds were divided into 4 groups and shot out. There were 13 in each group and the remaining 2 floated around Su Zimo.
Every green lotus seed galloped in midair and the glow that enveloped its body vaguely resembled a sword. It was extremely sharp.
This was also a change brought about by the advancement of the creation green lotus to grade 6.
The sharpness of every green lotus seed was condensed and it would vaguely take on the shape of a sword.
13 green lotus seeds meant that there were 13 swords that slashed towards the 4 incoming spirit consciousnesses. Poof, poof, poof. The 13 green lotus seeds struck the formless finger repeatedly, causing the entire finger to be riddled with holes. The light on the green lotus seeds dimmed while Monk Formless Essence Spirit Secret Skill was neutralized by the former as well. Clang, clang, clang. The spirit consciousness bone spear that came from behind was silent.
However, the green lotus seeds seemed to have eyes as they turned into long swords and slashed at the bone spear. In the blink of an eye, the bone spear dissipated. The stars tore through the air with a heavy pressure. The 13 green lotus seeds turned into rays of sword chi and struck the center of the star in succession, penetrating the star spirit consciousness directly. The divine hammer condensed by Tao being Zephyr Thunder's spirit consciousness suffered the same fate as it was smashed by the green lotus seeds into nothingness. This was the creation green lotus. By stealing the creation of heaven and earth to exist eternally, it was even more terrifying now that it had matured. Initially, when the creation green lotus was at grade 5, Su Zimo was still at the nascent soul realm and could only defend passively against the essence spirit secret skill of the titular disciples. But now, he could use the creation green lotus seeds to fight against the essence spirit secret skills of the titular disciples. The 4 essence spirit secret skills were blocked by the creation green lotus. The moment Tao being hidden death appeared, he hesitated for a moment before vanishing into the void once more. It was not that he did not want to attack, but he did not have the chance. In his original plan, it would be best if Su Zimo was killed by the essence spirit secret skills of the 4 titular disciples. If not, he would definitely be able to shatter the barrier of Su Zimo's essence spirit dermic weapon. He could then seize the opportunity to land a fatal blow. However, Tao being hidden death had not expected that Su Zimo did not even have to use the Mingwang prayer beads to defend against the 4 essence spirit secret skills. Furthermore, there were 2 extremely sharp green lotus seeds floating beside Su Zimo. If Tao being hidden death attacked, he would not pose any threat to Su Zimo and would only expose himself for nothing.
Although he was indignant, he still hid himself. As an assassin of hidden death sect, he had to be patient. As long as he was willing to wait patiently, there would definitely be a perfect opportunity to strike. 4 Dao being Zephyr Thunder, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Malevolent Earth, they were merely shocked that the 4 Essence Spirit secret skills were useless. However, for Monk Formless, it made his face turn ashen and his heart sank instantly. The fight between Essence Spirits seemed to be slow, but it happened in an instant. Throughout the entire process, Su Zimo was not affected at all. The Green Lotus platform was the same as before, smashing down on Monk Formless' head. This time round, no one could save him. Formless Dermic Seal. Monk Formless gave a final push and roared furiously. He closed his hands and conjured a gigantic Dermic Seal at the fastest speed, colliding with the creation Green Lotus. Poof! It did not stop at all. The Dermic Seal was destroyed instantly. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere as Monk Formless' hands were crushed by the Green Lotus platform. The Green Lotus continued to descend and smashed onto Monk Formless' head. Piak! Like a watermelon shattering, Monk Formless' head was smashed by the Green Lotus and his brain juices splattered all over the ground. However, the Green Lotus platform was not tainted at all. Swash! Before the Green Lotus platform landed on his head, a small glowing figure flew out from the back of Monk Formless' head. His essence spirit had exited his body. Monk Formless was a titular disciple and had cultivated for more than 2,000 years. Naturally, this body was incomparably precious and would not be abandoned unless it was absolutely necessary. However, losing his body was better than having his spirit destroyed. As long as his essence spirit was still around and he returned to the sect, regardless of assimilation or through the purchase of a Dao being physical body, he could continue cultivating. Of course, it was probably impossible for him to recover his former combat strength. His title as a titular disciple would definitely be replaced by the sect as well. At the thought of that, he felt a surge of resentment towards Su Zimo once more. You caused my body to be destroyed and my title to be lost. One day, I'll definitely make you pay for this. Monk Formless thought to himself. He had yet to realize at that moment that Su Zimo was not going to let him leave the place alive. The moment his essence spirit left his body, the 2 green lotus seeds that were initially revolving around Su Zimo flew out and transformed into 2 rays of sword chi that slashed towards Monk Formless' essence spirit. A beam of light blocked the path ahead. A beam of light chased from behind. Monk Formless did not manage to escape far before he felt a sharp stab. A throbbing pain came from his essence spirit and he could not help but tremble. Su Zimo, what are you doing? Noticing that he could not escape, Monk Formless panicked and could not help but shout in a fierce manner. I'm a titular disciple of Formless Monastery. Are you really going to kill me? Even if he was a monk of Formless Monastery and a titular disciple, he could not maintain his composure in the face of death. Titular disciples are the ones I'm going to kill. Su Zimo's voice was cold and merciless without any hesitation. Poof, poof. The 2 green lotus seeds penetrated Monk Formless' essence spirit and endless sharpness surged into his essence spirit, mincing it into pieces. His essence spirit was destroyed. The titular disciple of Formless Monastery had fallen in the Dao inheritance ground. The surrounding cultivators shuddered when they saw that. Looking at the green figure on the battlefield, everyone felt as though they were looking at a god of death that had walked out of hell. Right now, 3 titular disciples had already died in Su Zimo's hands in the Dao inheritance ground. Some cultivators gradually realized. When Su Zimo walked out of the 3 tribulations domain once more, it was not to escape but to kill. He was going to kill all the titular disciples. Chapter 1028. Killing Malevolent Earth. Chapter 1028. Killing Malevolent Earth. Monk Formless died. There was a momentary pause on the battlefield. The 3 titular disciples faced Su Zimo and none of them made any rash moves. Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other 2 had conflicted expressions. For titular disciples tried to kill a Dao being who had just entered the Void Reversion realm, but one of them was killed instead. Gazing at Su Zimo's back view and the battered corpse of Monk Formless at his feet, the three of them felt the urge to retreat for the first time. However, they could not retreat.
After all, the three of them were titular disciples and the reputation of the major sections.
The outcome of this battle had not been decided yet. If they chose to flee for their lives, the sects they belonged to would become the laughingstock of the entire cultivation world. Furthermore, in their opinion, even though Su Zimo managed to defend against the earlier fight and even killed Monk Formless, he was almost done with his trump cards. After all, he had just entered the Void Reversion realm. How long could he last? How much dermic powers did he have left after releasing so many powerful dermic arts? Most importantly, they believed that Dean was definitely rushing over after such a huge commotion here. Once Dean arrived, Su Zimo would definitely die. Unfortunately, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and the other two did not know that at the moment, Dean's attention was entirely focused on Lin Xuanji. In the Dao inheritance ground, one of them gave chase while the other fled for a full 20 days. Although Lin Xuanji could not defeat Dean head-on, he had many random tricks up his sleeves and it was extremely difficult for Dean to kill him as well. In the past 20 days, Dean had caught up to Lin Xuanji several times. However, the latter used many strange and mysterious methods to escape. Outside the Three Tribulations domain, the wind howled and blood chi filled the air. After killing Monk Formless, Su Zimo turned around slowly and looked at Dao being Heavenly Dipper, Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Dao being Malevolent Earth with a cold gaze. For some reason, the three of them felt an inexplicable pressure when they met Su Zimo's gaze. They were titular disciples. How could they feel pressure from the gaze of anyone of the same cultivation realm? Su Zimo moved. He walked slowly towards the three of them at a steady pace. As he strode over, the three of them felt a suffocating pressure envelop them. A massive shadow seemed to appear above the three of them. I have some grudges with Heavenly Dipper Sect and Zephyr Thunder Palace, so it's normal for their titular disciples to hunt me down. Su Zimo turned to look at Dao being Malevolent Earth and asked indifferently, "What is Malevolent Earth Sect here for?" "You're a fiend demon, so you deserve to be hunted by everyone." Dao being Malevolent Earth replied coldly. "Oh." Su Zimo nodded. "Fine then. You can die now." The moment he said that, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he charged towards Dao being Malevolent Earth with the creation Green Lotus in hand. Dao being Malevolent Earth's expression turned cold as he reacted swiftly and retrieved the Mystic Magnet Mountain from his storage bag. The Mystic Magnet Mountain was one of the unique treasures. Although it did not affect the creation Green Lotus, it was impossible for the creation Green Lotus to shatter it as well. Kill! Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Dao being Heavenly Dipper attacked at the same time. There was no way they could let Dao being Malevolent Earth die as well. If Dao being Malevolent Earth were to fall, only the two of them would be left. Even if Dao being Hidden Death was included, they would most likely be doomed. Boom! Dao being Malevolent Earth tossed out the Mystic Magnet Mountain. The Malevolent Earth blood on the Mystic Magnet Mountain had long been washed away and it expanded against the wind, forming a tall mountain peak that shielded Dao being Malevolent Earth. Dao being Malevolent Earth sneered internally. No matter how strong the creation Green Lotus was, it could not shatter a unique treasure. Rulai Dermic Seal. Right then, Dao being Malevolent Earth who was hiding behind the Mystic Magnet Mountain heard a voice. Su Zimo chanted Sanskrit and the void trembled. A golden light shone on his glabella and his divine spirit consciousness condensed rapidly, forming a golden swastika symbol. The appearance of that ancient word seemed to be able to freeze the void and suppress it. A divine aura emanated. Against that aura, the essence spirit in Dao being Malevolent Earth's consciousness shuddered and wanted to kneel and submit. Essence Spirit's secret skill. Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Dao being Heavenly Dipper exclaimed with widened eyes when they saw the golden symbol. They had not expected that Su Zimo would be able to use an Essence Spirit secret skill the moment he entered the Void Reversion realm. Furthermore, the might of that Essence Spirit secret skill made both of them shudder in fear. Rulai Dermic Seal. The Essence Spirit secret skill in the Great Day Rulai Sutra was extremely powerful and normally, it could only be released by a Dharma characteristics Essence Spirit. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had tried releasing it once against the pursuit of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. If Dao Lord Extreme Fire had not acted in time and injected the power of his Essence Spirit into the Dermic Seal,
he would have died in Thousand Demon Valley. The power of the Rulai Dermic seal released was indeed terrifying. An overlord was killed by that tiny golden word. This time round, Su Zimo had advanced to the Void Reversion realm. With the help of the 3 top-tier cultivation techniques of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, his black-haired essence spirit consciousness could extend 500 kilometers and was comparable to the essence spirit of a Dharma characteristic. Therefore, he attempted to release the Rulai Dermic seal again. However, he had still underestimated the requirements of the Rulai Dermic seal on the essence spirit. Although the golden word was successfully condensed, the black-haired essence spirit's light dimmed and was nearly sucked dry by the golden word. Su Zimo felt a wave of dizziness and his body swayed. It was way too scary. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. The power of his essence spirit was still insufficient. He could not use this essence spirit secret skill so casually in the future. He could only attempt it if his cultivation realm increased by 1 or 2 levels and the power of his essence spirit was raised. Malevolent Earth, watch out! Dao being Zephyr Thunder reminded hurriedly. In midair, the golden word shone brightly and charged towards the Mystic Magnet Mountain. A dermic weapon like the Mystic Magnet Mountain could not defend against an essence spirit secret skill at all. In the blink of an eye, the golden word passed through the Mystic Magnet Mountain and descended before Dao being Malevolent Earth. The golden word advanced and the void was collapsing. That golden word carried an aura that could suppress and destroy everything as it collided head-on. Dao being Malevolent Earth's pupils constricted. He clearly knew that this was a terrifying essence spirit secret skill, but he could not defend against it. He had just released his essence spirit secret skill and could not condense it again within a short period of time. In the blink of an eye, the golden word imprinted itself on Dao being Malevolent Earth's glabella and disappeared instantly. Dao being Malevolent Earth shuddered. The next moment, his gaze turned dull and lifeless. His expression froze and his life force drained rapidly. The surroundings were so silent that a pin drop could be heard. All the cultivators widened their eyes and opened their mouths slightly, looking at Dao being Malevolent Earth in shock. Thump! Under countless gazes, Dao being Malevolent Earth fell to the ground. He laid on the ground without any wounds on his body at all. However, he was lifeless and no different from a corpse. His life force had dissipated entirely. Dao being Malevolent Earth's consciousness was calm and silent as well. His essence spirit had already been crushed into dust by the golden word and dissipated within his consciousness. His essence spirit was destroyed. The titular disciple of Malevolent Earth sect was killed by the Rulai Dermic seal and died. Chapter 1029. Killing titular disciples like slaying dogs. Chapter 1029. Killing titular disciples like slaying dogs. In the blink of an eye, Monk Formless and Dao being Malevolent Earth, 2 great titular disciples, died. Outside the 3 tribulations domain, there was silence. Many cultivators who were watching looked at Su Zimo in horror, as though they had seen a ghost. Nobody expected that Su Zimo, who had returned after merely 20 days, would be so domineering. For titular disciples joined forces while Dao being Hidden Death hid in the vicinity, awaiting an opportunity to strike. Yet, the outcome was the death of 2 titular disciples. The #1 monster incarnate in history had truly risen. Many cultivators had the same thought. They were not the only ones. At that moment, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Zephyr Thunder's eyes were filled with shock as well. The tides are on the side of that person. Who can suppress him in the Dao inheritance ground? At that moment, both of their hearts shuddered. There were already 4 titular disciples who died in Su Zimo's hands. The tides were forged in his favor with the blood of titular disciples. Who could match his invincible might? When a butcher killed many dogs, an invisible aura would form around him. Any dog with a bit of intelligence would be able to sense it and not dare to get close. Once a butcher's eyes widened, even the fiercest dog would have to flee with its tail between its legs. But now, Su Zimo was killing titular disciples. He killed titular disciples like he was killing dogs. At the same time that he used his essence spirit secret skill to kill Dao being Malevolent Earth,
Su Zimo's essence spirit became extremely weak and he even felt dizzy. He stood on the spot motionlessly. In reality, this was the only chance for Dao being Zephyr Thunder, Dao being Heavenly Dipper and Dao being Hidden Death to attack. Unfortunately, the three of them were stunned by the scene of Dao being Malevolent Earth's death. They hesitated and did not make a move to either fight or retreat. Su Zimo stood quietly for a moment and snapped out of his stupor. Swallowing a few elixirs, he put away the mystic magnet mountain and strode towards Dao being Heavenly Dipper with a cold gaze. Although the three of them were hesitant, Su Zimo was a decisive person. Those titular disciples did not care about their reputation and joined forces to kill him in the Dao inheritance ground, causing Demonis Ji and Ming Zhan to barely survive, and he almost died as well. The moment he walked out of the Three Tribulations domain, he was prepared to start a massacre. Dao being Heavenly Dipper was a titular disciple after all and calmed down swiftly when he saw Su Zimo charging over. In his eyes, stars flickered and transformed in a mysterious manner. Su Zimo, you've just entered the Void Reversion realm. How much strength and methods do you have left after the consecutive battles? Dao being Heavenly Dipper hollered with a domineering might. His words were also a reminder to Dao being Zephyr Thunder and Dao being Hidden Death who were hiding in the shadows. He wanted the two of them to be resolute and continue working together to kill Su Zimo. It's enough to kill you. Su Zimo arrived before Dao being Heavenly Dipper with a murderous aura. Waving his left hand, the creation green lotus shone brightly and tore through the void, releasing streams of chaos chi towards Dao being Heavenly Dipper. Dao being Heavenly Dipper was shocked. Although the green and crystalline lotus looked fragile enough to be broken with a single attack, its might was terrifying and could even shatter connate Dao being dermic weapons. This was how dermic weapons increased the combat strength of a cultivator. Many times, a powerful dermic weapon could even help cultivators kill those above their level. Dao being Heavenly Dipper's eyes flickered with a calm expression. First, he channeled the ancient legacy of his sect, the astral elephant saber, and slashed it at the creation green lotus. Thereafter, he gripped Heaven Splitter tightly with his other hand and thrust it towards Su Zimo's chest. Saber intent burst forth. Although the astral elephant saber was also a connate Dao being dermic weapon, it had been passed down through the ages and could not destroy the might of the creation green lotus with a single slash. Furthermore, Dao being Heavenly Dipper's counterattack was not merely a passive defense. There was also the retaliation of Heaven Splitter. Two gigantic stars appeared in Dao being Heavenly Dipper's eyes, replacing his pupils. All of a sudden, two beams of starlight shot out from Dao being Heavenly Dipper's eyes without warning, piercing towards Su Zimo's face. Astral Eye. This was the inheritance visual technique of Heavenly Dipper sect and was extremely powerful. Even though he was faced with the invincible tides forged after killing 4 titular disciples, Dao being Heavenly Dipper showed no fear and released all his trump cards with a powerful counterattack. When he saw that, Dao being Zephyr Thunder's eyes flashed with lightning. Narrowing his gaze, he made up his mind and charged towards Su Zimo's side. Dao being Heavenly Dipper's methods were suffocating. After all, there was only a single creation green lotus. If the two of them cooperated well, they could definitely kill Su Zimo here. TSK. 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 The moment the stars appeared in Dao being Heavenly Dipper's eyes, Su Zimo's right eye shone with sword lights. The sword lights formed a sword formation in midair. It was the Illumination sword formation. The starlight descended and collided with the sword formation, causing a loud bang. The sword formation dissipated immediately and starlight scattered in a bedazzling manner. Dao being Heavenly Dipper only felt his vision blur and narrowed his eyes instinctively. When he opened his eyes again, his body shuddered as though he was pulled by some mysterious force and he dodged to the side. The two sabers seemed like they were about to leave his hands, as well as the saber intent that he had just condensed dissipated instantly. A gray mountain stood beside Su Zimo, exuding a mysterious aura as it sucked Dao being Heavenly Dipper's 2 sabers. The moment Dao being Zephyr Thunder arrived behind Su Zimo, the hammer in his hands tilted and he staggered, almost being dragged by the mystic magnet mountain as well. It was the ancient unique treasure, the mystic magnet mountain. After killing Dao being Malevolent Earth, Su Zimo had already retrieved the treasure. By releasing it at this critical moment, he instantly undid the combined attack of the 2 titular disciples. Even though the attacks of the two titular disciples stopped, Su Zimo's movements did not pause at all. The jade-green lotus platform fell and smashed towards Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's head. At that moment, Dao Being Heavenly Dipper wielded two sabers that were drawn in by the mystic magnet mountain, causing it to seem as though he was stuck in a swamp. If he did not let go, there was no way he could avoid the creation green lotus. However, if he let go, he would lose two connate dermic weapons. In the blink of an eye, Dao Being Heavenly Dipper made a decision. He released his grip and abandoned his connate dermic weapons, retreating in a bid to escape. Right then, a strange black light shone in Su Zimo's eyes. Caught off guard, Dao Being Heavenly Dipper exchanged glances with him and his mind went blank momentarily. Heavenly Fiend Eye. Starlight shone brightly in Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's spirit consciousness, creating massive waves. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper jolted awake instantly. Another visual technique. Out of fright, Dao Being Heavenly Dipper broke out in cold sweat. If it was anyone else, even if they were not controlled by the Heavenly Fiend Eye, they would not be able to wake up so quickly. However, it was already too late for Dao Being Heavenly Dipper to escape from the attack range of the creation green lotus with that slight delay. He tugged his waist and crushed a jade accessory that hung on it. Swoosh! A bedazzling light flashed and enveloped him. Protection dermic weapon. Boom! At the same time that the protection dermic weapon was formed, the creation green lotus struck it with a loud bang. Crack, crack, crack. The creation green lotus shattered the barrier of the protection dermic weapon with a single attack. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper seized the opportunity to retreat. Su Zimo flicked his wrist and the creation green lotus spun in his palm. The seemingly weak lotus leaf brushed past Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's throat gently. Shing! A stream of blood spewed out. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's head was sliced off neatly. The edges of the lotus leaf were sharper than divine weapons. Chapter 1030 Pursuit. Chapter 1030 Pursuit. Although Dao Being Heavenly Dipper was a titular disciple with rich experience and knowledge, he knew nothing about the creation green lotus. Or rather, not many people in the cultivation world knew about the creation green lotus. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper had not expected that the thin and crystalline lotus leaf would possess such a terrifying lethality. This method of killing was truly unconstrained and unreasonable. However, the outcome was extremely cruel. His head was severed and his body was crippled. A small glowing human flew out from the head. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's essence spirit had a frightened expression and wanted to escape like a stray dog. OM! Su Zimo chanted Sanskrit and the damning mantra descended. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's essence spirit shuddered and the light that surrounded it dimmed significantly. Ma! The damning mantra sounded again. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's body shuddered once more and the light on his essence spirit became almost negligible. Ni! Pa! Su Zimo did not pause at all and released 4 Sanskrit words of the damning mantra consecutively, not giving Dao Being Heavenly Dipper any chance to catch his breath. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's essence spirit paused in midair step by step. He had just taken 4 steps when cracks appeared on his essence spirit. Without the protection of his body, his essence spirit could not withstand the repeated attacks of the 4 Sanskrit words of the damning mantra, and his life force vanished as he fell from midair. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper was dead. The initially restless crowd had already quietened down and was silent. All the cultivators held their breaths and focused, as though they were oppressed by an indescribable aura. None of them dared to speak, afraid that a catastrophe would befall them. Including Dao Being Heavenly Dipper, there were already 5 titular disciples who died in the Dao inheritance ground. Furthermore, all of them died in the hands of a single person. What was even more frightening was that the number might increase further. Dao Being Zephyr Thunder was retreating. A look of panic finally appeared in his eyes. He did not want any treasures or the Purple Thunder Manual anymore. It did not matter even if he was disgraced. Right now, he only wanted to leave the Dao inheritance ground alive. This place was a nightmare for the titular disciples. Right then, Su Zimo turned around slowly and his gaze landed on Dao Being Zephyr Thunder's face. It was as cold as a knife and chilling to the bones. Dao being Zephyr Thunder realized that he might not be able to escape. Desolate Marshal, you've killed way too many people this time round. Dao being Zephyr Thunder suddenly spoke. Oh. Su Zimo raised his brow and asked, so what? Dao being Zephyr Thunder said, titular disciples have an extremely high status in the super sections. While the super sects might not be bothered if normal cultivators in the sect were killed, they will definitely not let you off if the titular disciples are killed. By now, there are already 5 titular disciples that have fallen in your hands. This means that you've already offended 5 super sects. 100 Refinement sect alone won't be able to protect you. If Extreme Fire is stubborn, the only outcome will be for 100 Refinement sect to be destroyed along with you. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he asked with a fake smile, so? Dao being Zephyr Thunder was enraged. He had said so much but Su Zimo did not take it seriously at all. Given his status and reputation in the cultivation world, who would dare to be so rude and look down on him? However, he suppressed his anger very quickly. Given the pressing circumstances, he could only swallow everything. Dao being Zephyr Thunder took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, therefore, you've already killed enough titular disciples. If you attack me as well, you'll have to face the revenge of the 6 super sections. You won't be able to take it. Oh. Su Zimo replied indifferently and said in a nonchalant manner, so what? I'll kill as many as they come. The reason why I'm at this level today is because I've trampled on the corpses of countless paragons. Foo. Dao being Zephyr Thunder laughed as well. Desolate Marshal, I don't think you understand what I mean. If the 6 super sects want to take revenge, they won't send void reversions after you. They're going to send Dharma characteristics and conjoint bodies. The crowd stirred. Many cultivators knew that Dao being Zephyr Thunder's words were not meant to scare Su Zimo. The death of a titular disciple was definitely a major event for the super sects. It was normal for Dharma characteristic Dao lords or conjoint body mighty figures to appear. There's something that I've never understood. Su Zimo smiled faintly and asked, in the Dao inheritance ground, you guys were the ones who ganged up on me but were killed instead. How can the sects behind you have the cheek to seek revenge on me, or even send forth Dharma characteristics and conjoint bodies? Dao being Zephyr Thunder felt a burning sensation on his face. Under normal circumstances, in the cultivation world, even if someone was killed in a fight between cultivators of the same cultivation realm, experts of the sect would not show themselves. That was because the escalation of the conflict might result in a chaotic battle between 2 major sects or even multiple factions and the situation would get out of hand. Throughout history, there have been countless such painful lessons. Therefore, generally speaking, if cultivators of the same cultivation realm were to fight, even if one of them were to die, it would only be because their skills were inferior and no experts of the sect would seek revenge. However, Su Zimo's situation was different. Behind him was a declining 100 Refinement sect. However, 100 Refinement sect was only one of the unorthodox groups. Even if there was an expert like Extreme Fire, there was no way he could stop super sects like the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects. Most importantly, Su Zimo had already formed a feud with the super sections. They would definitely not allow such a terrifying monster incarnate to grow. Out of fear, the super sects would definitely take action. If such a monster incarnate were to enter the Dharma characteristic realm, there wouldn't be many people in the cultivation world who could subdue him. No matter what, you've already offended so many sections. It's not good for you to incur the wrath of my Zephyr Thunder Palace as well, Dao being Zephyr Thunder said in a deep voice. Although he said it beautifully, many cultivators could tell that Dao being Zephyr Thunder was begging for mercy. Su Zimo sneered internally. Even if he wanted to stop, Zephyr Thunder Palace would not let him off. As long as he did not hand over the Purple Thunder Manual, Zephyr Thunder Palace would continue to hunt him down. There's something you didn't get right. Su Zimo looked at Dao being Zephyr Thunder and said slowly, since I've already offended so many sects, I don't mind adding your sect in as well. Crack. In a flash of lightning, Su Zimo had already vanished from the spot and was charging towards Dao being Zephyr Thunder. Zephyr Thunder escape. Dao being Zephyr Thunder seemed to be prepared for this.
Without saying a word, he swept his body with a violent gust of wind and burst forth with lightning before turning to flee.
The two cultivators were extremely fast and passed through the crowd instantly. Suddenly, a gigantic pair of dermic power wings grew from Su Zimo's back. Ethereal wings was a secret skill comprehended by an ancient mighty figure through observing the Rakshasa race. Although its speed was far from the frightening speed of the Rakshasa race, coupled with lightning escape, Su Zimo's speed doubled once again. Kill! He roared and thunderclap kill burst forth. Boom!
Dao being Zephyr Thunder felt as though a thunderclap had exploded in his ears and the blood chi in his body churned.
It was extremely uncomfortable and his movement technique slowed down. That delay allowed Su Zimo to catch up from behind. Waving the creation green lotus in his hands, it shone brightly and smashed down towards Dao being Zephyr Thunder. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.